Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the November 13th, 2007 meeting of the Glendale City Council. May we have the roll call, please?
Council members Drayman?
Here.
Quintero?
Here.
Weaver?
Here.
Yousefian?
Here.
Najarian?
Here. I would like to invite the Scouts of Den 6 and 7 of Pack 131, Verdugo Woodlands, Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, and Webelos, and anyone else who is affiliated, to come forward and lead us in the flag salute, the Pledge of Allegiance. Yes, parents, you could get a better angle from behind the dais. You're certainly welcome to. And there's the microphone. Mr. Kassakhian will set you, young boys and girls. And copies of the DVD will be available in the gift shop after the show. Okay. Please, when you're ready.
Okay. You guys ready?
Yes.
Gonna salute. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
My name is Tristan Rand.
And if you'll stay right there, we're going to have a brief invocation by the city clerk, and I'll have a few things to say to you afterwards.
Thank you, Mayor. On November 12th, yesterday, 1954, Ellis Island closed after processing more than 20 million immigrants since opening in New York Harbor in 1892. As the nation's gateway for thousands of immigrants from all over the world, Ellis Island and its century, our very own Statue of Liberty, have come to symbolize the American dream and the promise of a better life. Tonight we pray for our immigrant brothers and sisters who have sacrificed so much to come to our shores and help build our nation into the strongest in the world. We give thanks for the talented and hardworking people of the world who made the journey to become Americans and have woven themselves into the fabric of our country. As the inscription on the Statue of Liberty states, we will always welcome the tired, the poor, the huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of faraway teeming shores who follow the torch held high by Lady Liberty to America's golden door with the promises of liberty, truth, and justice for all. Amen.
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 And Scouts, I'd like to thank you all for coming down today. And I have a special gift from the City Council. Give each one of you, if you'll tell us your name, how old you are, and where you go to school, I can give you a special souvenir. So why don't you start?
My name is Tristan Rapp. I live in a condo building. I don't know the address or something.
What school do you go to?
I go to Artie White.
And how old are you?
9.
Thank you very much. Here, I'll shake your hand. And here's your souvenir pin. You can go next. Why don't you step to the
I
side?
do nothing but clowns.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Michael Osterbaum. I go to Verdugo Woodlands and I'm 9 years old.
Thank you for coming to City Council.
My name is Sean and I go to Verdugo Woodlands.
Thank you, Sean.
I am Kobe Sarkisian. I go to Artie Wide and I'm 9 years old.
Thank you. Here's your...
My name is Michael. My full name is Michael Lawrence Becker. I live on 1321 Cedar Court Road. I am 9 years old and I go to Artie White Elementary School.
Thank you very much for coming to lead us in the pledge. Young lady, tell us your name.
Gabrielle.
How old are you?
7.
Okay, congratulations. Thank you for helping us.
No.
My name is Jonathan David Asterbaum. I am 9 years old and I go to Verdugo Woodlands.
Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
There you go.
My name is Jacob William Matthews. I am 9 and I go to Verdugo Woodlands.
Well, thank you, Jacob. Congratulations. Thank you. Why don't we give one to your den leader, too? How about that? Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Kassakhian, may we have your report?
The agenda for the November 13, 2007 regular meeting of the Glendale City Council was posted on Thursday, November 8, 2007 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. And what is next?
At 3 is presentation and appointments. At 3A is agenda preview for the meeting of November 20th, 2007.
Yes, and who's going to help us in that? Ms. Ayad?
Yes. Housing Authority meeting, there's no items on the agenda reported for November 20th. There's no items reported for the Redevelopment Agency as well. For council meeting, we do have action items, and that starts with Police Chief, Police Fee Update Report submitted, resolution for approving update police fees, including revised schedule for burglar alarms, permit fees, and false alarms. The Interim Director of Public, of GWP, purchase of renewal of energy, resolution authorizing a power of agreement with the Southern California Public Power Authority to purchase 20 megawatts of renewable energy from Pebbles Spring Wind Generation Facility. Item 2 is resolution authorizing transmission of shipping and firming agreement with SCAPA or other parties for ultimate delivery of renewal of energy generated at the project to the Nevada-Oregon border. Director of Planning, proposed ordinance amending Title 5, 16, and 30 of the GMC relating to the miscellaneous revision to the Glendale Municipal Code. Item 8D, Director of Planning regarding options concerning the board zoning appeals and the Planning Commission. And item 9A is hearing, Director of Planning regarding historic resources designation and Miles Act contract for the property at 3637 El Lido Drive. Director of Planning regarding historic resource designation and Mills Act contract for 922 Cumberland Road. Item 9C is, again, Director of Planning regarding the historic resource designation and Miles Act contract for the property at 1661 Valley View Road. And last item is Director of Planning regarding historic resource designation and Miles Act contract for the property at 321 Lawson Place. And that concludes our agenda.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to the next item, please.
At 3B is replacement of Mr. Darren Kameya to the Greater Los Angeles Vector Control District. Councilmember Yousefian is a panelist.
Okay. The next item?
3C is a reappointment replacement of Mr. William Kane to the Planning Commission. Panelist is Councilmember Drayman.
And before you address Mr. Drayman, I do have a request to speak from items 3C through F by Mr. Allen. Why don't we take him up front? Mr. Allen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council staff, of course, the public. I'm Barry Allen. Again, is a request that I believe it was last week on any appointments or potential appointments or nominations. I believe the public should hear from you as to exactly the value that this particular individual can bring to the particular board or commission that he's being nominated to or appointed to. I know last week, the first few, we did get some good information. The others, it sort of petered out. And I think the key thing is, what is the value they bring to the party? Barry Allen, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Drayman.
Mr. Mayor, first let me start with, and it may be of interest to Mr. Allen on this level at any rate, this is kind of a comedy of errors. I did not nominate Mr. Kane to this position. In fact, the planning opening that I was assigned to through the new rotation is a brand new one. And if you take a look, the two positions that I did nominate to were the Civil Service Commission and the TPC. And I put forth two names. Mr. Kane was not mine. Now, the comedy part is that this afternoon I received a note on my desk to return Mr. Kane's phone call. I knew that he had an application in, and it was in our report. I just didn't notice that my name was attached to it. So I returned his call, and we had a very nice chat, and I told him it was very nice of him to call me, and it was a pleasure to speak to him, and so on, not quite understanding that he was calling me to introduce himself because undoubtedly he had read this online and was sort of trying to thank me for nominating him. It's not that I wouldn't, I just haven't looked at it yet. And so imagine my surprise when I glanced down here and saw, yes, okay, Mr. Coleman, Mr. Welch, and whoops, where did Mr. Drayman's name become attached to 3C? So I would like to know how you all would like to deal with that.
Well, we can simply take it off calendar until such time as you do suggest a candidate. Mr. Starbuck?
I think it's a matter of how it's been worded, and I think there's a question whether these types of items should even go on the agenda. But I think what's intended here is that Mr. Drayman is the council member who will at some point bring you back a recommendation for an appointment for this position, which happens to be held currently by Mr. Kane. We haven't, in the past, the city clerk has just announced who the panel is going to be. In this case, the panel is now down to one council member, and we could have just as easily just announced verbally that Mr. Drayman would be the council member who would be filling a upcoming vacancy or reappointment on the Planning Commission. As it is, it was listed this way, and it sounds like Mr. Kane's being reappointed. It's actually just pointing out that Mr. Kane's position on the Planning Commission will be the one that will be filled either by him or by somebody else.
Okay.
I think that's the explanation.
Okay. We'll be more clear on that.
Yeah, we'll need to work on how those are
confusion.
listed, if even listed.
Or even listed at all.
Yeah.
Because of the new process.
Our past practice has been the city clerk will just announce verbally that a panel has been formed. That same thing could be done for an individual council member, just made an oral announcement at the meeting under presentations. So we'll get that cleared up.
Mayor,
Mr. Weaver.
I presume all the ones that are being appointed tonight, all of you have talked to the department heads per the agreements.
Yes. Well, I
That's it's in there, it says shall. But you can still appoint even though the policy says consult with the department head.
Mr. Yousefian.
Mr. Mayor, I'm assuming that you would have no problem with also with Mr. Crisp's zoning appeals I know you put this name on, so you are within your 30-day limit, just like I did with the other individual. I guess we want to hold that over until we have our meeting about the combination of the two boards.
Well, let's get to that item, and then we can discuss it. I know that was a consideration we had. Mr. Drayman.
Well, and in point of fact, Mr. Mayor, that is one reason why I would hold off, at least for myself, with this particular slot until there's some determination made as to whether we're going to combine the BZA and the Planning Commission, because, as has been pointed out, and I know you're well aware, their roles are decidedly different in certain ways, and so anyway, I know there's some discussion to follow with council, so I would hold off on that anyway.
Well, the issue, though, the BZA has lost 2 members, so I think we need to get some bodies on the BZA in the meantime.
Mr. Starbird, if there's nothing else on 3B, we'll go down to, 3D, where we can, if we would like to talk BZA, that might be...
I just thought I'd know we have that matter on next week's agenda.
Okay.
Scheduled for next week. Plus
Scheduled for next
the
week.
2 appointments that you made to the Civil Service Commission, which are these 2 individuals are on the BZA now. We made those effective the end of November, essentially November 27th, if my memory is correct, to allow them to continue to serve on the BZA, to make sure that we had enough members.
So there's a quorum?
Yes. Currently.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kassakhian. Let's move to the next item.
3D is appointment of Mr. James J. Crisp to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Panelist is Mayor Najarian.
Okay, I would like to submit, I did submit Mr. Crisp's name last week. Mr. Crisp comes highly recommended. His name was brought up, and I did discuss it with our planning director, Mr. Hirani. Mr. Crisp is currently a zoning administrator with the Office of Zoning Administration of the City of Los Angeles. He was for 16 and a half years. His educational experience is from the University of Southern California, graduating summa cum laude. And he also obtained a Master's of Science degree in Urban and Regional Planning by the School of Architecture and Fine Arts and the School of Public Administration. I am fully confident that he will do an outstanding job with the little contingency that the BZA exists as we currently have it. Obviously, if there is a merger, we'll have to deal with that, but should the BZA continue in existence, I would love to see him helping us with some of those issues that they face. So if there's a second to that.
I'll second it.
Well, can I make the motion?
Mr. Mayor?
It's a nomination. It's akin to a nomination, so anyone can make a nomination.
Mr. Yousefian.
In all due respect, I think it's very inconsistent with what we did last week. I did also nominate Mr. Black, and upon your request, I withdrew the nomination until next week that we deal with this.
If you'd like to bring back Mr. Black, I think, obviously, I did state that it's obviously conditional upon the continued existence of the BZA.
And I'm just trying to stay consistent. I mean, I don't care what you guys want to do, but I think we're trying to keep people off of the BZA so we don't appoint them, and then later on, if the scope of work changes and they decide this is not what they want to do because they have to be planning commission and then have to remove them, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm just trying, I mean, that is your recommendation to me last week when I brought Mr. Black's on. It was on the agenda. And upon your request and the city manager's request and my colleague's request, I was told, hold it advance until this item comes. Am I forgetting this?
No, I think that's what you stated last meeting, and you indicated you'd hold off until this matter was up. We could just place both the names on next week, but it's up to you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, Mr. Quintero.
Look, I personally, the idea that we've already prejudged and we're going to consolidate and so forth, there are openings on these commissions. There's multiple land use issues in front of these commissions on any different, on every time that they meet. So for me, I think we should appoint the people, get them on board, and we'll see where it takes us. I don't know why we're holding off on Mr. Black or Mr. Crisp or anyone else. Let's get them appointed and get them to start doing the work. I mean, if we have the discussion next week, is something going to change the following week? No. The holidays are coming, and I mean, no matter what, there's a tremendous lead time. So I'm for just appointing the people and bringing Mr. Black's nomination up next week, and let's get it done. That's the way I see it.
Mr. Drayman.
Well, this is just a hiccup. I mean, this is it's not often that the city council sits down to figure out whether we're going to consolidate two boards and commissions together. And so, what was last week a recommendation is this week not. So let's just do it one way or the other. Let's either do it now or recalendar it for next week. Either way, but it's just a hiccup. So let's deal with it and move forward, and not let's get the car and drive here. That's my request.
Okay. Foot off the brake, gently on the accelerator. I apologize to Mr. Yousefian if there was a misdirection on my part, but it is an unusual situation where we're consolidating and appointing two boards which may or may not exist. Let's have the roll for Mr. Crisp.
Council members Drayman?
Yes.
Quintero?
Yes.
Weaver?
Aye.
Yousefian?
Abstain.
Mayor Najarian?
Yes. Next item, please. Mr. Drayman.
May I ask then that if that is the case, I would certainly be very happy or willing to vote on Mr. Black if we
have to put it back on.
If Mr. Yousefian wishes.
It's not on the agenda.
That's what I'm saying. If you
Put it on for next
to
week.
do so, I'd be more than happy to.
I'll wait until the discussion next week.
Okay. That's fine with me.
Next item, please.
At 3 is appointment of Mr. Roy C. Coleman to the Civil Service Commission. This was Councilmember Drayman.
Yes, it was. Thank you. I did nominate and do nominate for your appointment Roy C. Coleman for the Civil Service Commission. I spoke at length with Matt Doyle about him. I also have done a little reading about him, both here and on the Internet, and I am pleased to tell you that he is has resided in the city of Glendale for some 24 years, attended Loyola University, and served 21 years in various positions enforcing and administrating California labor and civil rights laws. He has a long record, including having served on our Civil Service Commission before. To go directly to something that Mr. Allen raised, one of the things that appealed to me about him was this particular comment, which I'd like to read now in his application. My goals, if appointed, would be to staunchly enforce the rules of the Commission, to bring a strong sense of integrity to the Commission, and to treat all individuals who come before the Commission with equity and fairness. And I believe he will do just that, with a background as a hearing officer for Labor Commission and commissioner with the Deputy Labor Commissioner with the State of California, Department of Industrial Relations, as a consultant with the State of California Department of Fair Employment and Housing, and as a local veterans employment representative. So I would, at this point, nominate Roy Coleman.
I want to second the nomination and also say on Mr. Coleman's behalf, I met him many years ago when we both worked in Vietnam vet employment programs, and just reading from his resume, he performed direct employment services on behalf of veterans with a special emphasis on placing disabled, minority, and other Vietnam-era veterans into private and public sector employment. And it's my feeling that, in fact, this latest era of combat veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan are going to have many barriers to employment, including disability. And I think Mr. Coleman will serve with distinction on the Civil Service Board and be able to accommodate the new era of veterans that are returning home.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, we'll take roll.
Council members Drayman?
Yes.
Quintero?
Yes.
Weaver?
Aye.
Yousefian?
Aye.
Mayor Najarian?
Yes. Next item.
3F is appointment of Mr. Christopher Welch to the Transportation and Parking Commission. This nomination was also offered up by Councilmember Drayman.
Mr. Drayman?
Yes. Also gives me pleasure to nominate Christopher Welch to the Transportation and Parking Commission. Chris brings a number of interesting elements that I think are in keeping with a variety of aspects of his role on the TPC, if appointed. For one thing, he has an undergraduate degree in architecture, so he knows something about design, and is also a licensed general contractor, which also helps in understanding some of the construction and design elements necessary. He's also was the founder of Buzz Coffee, successfully operating that chain for some time before selling it, and has represented not one but two different community residential organizations. So he brings a background in the needs of business, the needs of homeowners, and in design. And again, I'm not trying to pick on you, Mr. Allen, but I think you raise a very good point, and I think it is important to reference that. And this is one of the reasons that I want to appoint him. As a resident of South Glendale, which suffers from a severe parking shortage in many of its neighborhoods, I believe that Chris would make a valuable member of that team. He is well aware of how those issues, neighborhood issues, traffic issues, and so on impact residential neighborhoods, especially the most densely populated area in the city, which is in the 91205 area of our city. So I'm pleased to nominate him at this time.
Second.
And Mr. Drayman, I think what's important, interestingly, he lives on Rhodes End for a commissioner on transportation, and Rhodes End.
And I would like to add one thing, and just to make it clear, not specifically regarding Mr. Welch, but Mr. Welch is a member of the Adams Hill Homeowners Association, and in no way in this appointment or in any other appointment that comes before us will membership in any group, organization, or club be a factor which will cause me to discriminate against a applicant. They are all judged on their personal traits, characteristics, experience, education, and training.
Well, I'd like to add, Mr. Mayor, that is true. However, if Mr. Welch were serving on an organization, club, or some other organization while serving on the TPC that actively sought to block or counter or short-circuit the rights of other citizens, but in fact doing so as a means of taking a position that is contrary to the policy of this city, then I personally would have a problem, and I would not be nominating him.
Well, you're talking about personal actions of the individual, and that's perfectly fine. However, mere membership in an organization is not, at least in my mind, a...
Correct, and as you know, mere membership has never been the issue from this councilman.
Let's take roll call, please.
Council members Drayman?
Yes.
Quintero?
Yes.
Weaver?
Aye.
Yousefian?
Aye.
Mayor Najarian?
Yes. And before we leave the presentations and appointments, I would like to request from my colleagues a 30-day extension. I'm not sure if that policy has been officially enacted, but I do have an appointment up for the building and fire appeals, which is running into its 30-day deadline this week, and I'd request an additional 30 days with which to evaluate the candidates and bring back a nomination. I think there's a couple other outstanding, too, so if everyone else would like the 30 days for anything outstanding, let's just do our housekeeping. And
I'd like for the TPC an extension and the Commission on the Status of Women.
Mine for the 2 DRBs.
Okay.
Mine for the building and fire.
Well, let's just grant a blanket waiver. And if can we do that, Mr. Howard?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, actually, the way the resolution is written is that the council member seeking a 30-day extension merely needs to state that they need it and the reasons for it, and that's it. It doesn't require a vote of the council. It's
Okay.
it's essentially automatic. It just requires that the public be informed that they're at that 30 days and they need 30 more days, and the reasons for it.
We can't do a blanket waiver for everyone.
You don't need to. I mean, you've done it. Essentially, the council member just says, I need 30 days because I'm still evaluating the candidates.
I think we
I
covered
remember
everything.
just the newest one, though, and that's not 30 days or enough, but definitely the building and fire.
Okay, very good. Next item, please.
City Council or staff comments?
Mr. Weaver.
Adding on to what we just talked about, for 2 weeks now I've mentioned, does anybody want to serve on the DRB? I have some names down there, and I will choose from that list, but I'm looking for all those active homeowners and others that supposedly want to see change. Get your names in, or I will select from the group I've got, or nominate from the ones I've got to this council. So if you're not filling out the forms, and maybe it'll make it a difference if we ever move the DRBs to the evening, where you don't have to be working to serve on it. That might make a difference. But for now, please turn your resumes in. And that's the one comment. The other, believe it or not, we start decorating the Rose Float on December 1st. Anybody that's interested can go on our website, GlendaleRoseFloat.org. The applications are on there to fill out. We'll be working all through December, and we really expect to bring home another winner January 1st.
Thank you. Mr. Drayman?
One thing, just to, you might also mention that Council has given instruction to staff with regard to the DRB issue related to nighttime meetings. So that ultimately may be a factor anyway, just as you say, Mr. Weaver. I just have one item, Mr. Mayor, and that has to do with an issue in Spar Heights, the Bowman's Cleaner site on Ocean View at Sunview, which has been a vacant building for some time, and apparently there were some I don't know if hazardous materials issues is correct, or at least something like that from what I have heard. In any case, there is supposedly the issue has been rectified and the property has been sold. The concern is that the owner apparently took a permit to fence the property and has done so with bits and pieces of wrought iron fencing.
That was art.
Maybe it would qualify as art, but as fencing, it is bits and pieces of wrought iron fencing that look like they've been harvested from all over. Little bits of security gates from here and a section of security fence from there. It's been cobbled together to surround the property, and then it's been covered with a nice, bright silver tarp. And so I've been getting a lot of calls from residents saying what gives, not just residents, homeowners, but neighbors, businesses in Spar Heights, including from the president of the Spar Heights Merchants Association, Mr. Trulick. So I want to know if we can take a look at that and find out.
We'll have Code Enforcement Neighborhood Services take a look at it first thing in the morning.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Quintero?
Yeah. I have spoken to some of the traffic officers who are investigating the hit and run that took place on October 7th, 2007, at approximately 8:15 in the evening at the intersection of Colorado and Chevy Chase. This gentleman was walking westbound on Colorado from church services when he was struck in the intersection by a vehicle traveling southbound on Chevy Chase Drive. Well, they basically they're not having much success, and so I'm interested in perhaps coming up with a reward, a $10,000 reward. That's what we did for the last hit and run. They had more opportunities. They had a grill on that particular car, and so it was easier to solve. They did a tremendous job working backwards from a grill to find that person. But if we could, maybe a $10,000 reward to be paid, obviously, for information that leads to the conviction and arrest, I think we should do it. The last time around, the county supervisor, the Board of Supervisors, actually provided the reward, and I believe someone may be entitled to that reward.
We'll place the matter on agenda.
Put it on the agenda and see if he was only 53 years old. The person hit him and kept going. So.
Thank you. Mr. Yousefian, any comments?
Actually, Mr. Quintero, when did this accident happen?
October 7th.
October 7th. And what time? Do you know approximately?
8:15 in the evening.
Okay, so if anybody has any information for October 7th and 8:15
at Colorado and Chevy Chase.
Okay, and they think that the possible silver compact car,
white or silver car.
Yeah, major damage to the front end, hood, or windshield. So if anybody was around in those times, please give the police department a call. And they can call at 548-4840 or 548-3131.
I might note, Mr. Mayor, we have had our traffic message board at that intersection ever since this accident, asking people for information on the event and giving the same numbers. So they've been down there trying to get information
Right,
since the
they've
event.
actually followed up on numerous leads
Good.
that appear to be promising, so there are enough people around, at 8 o'clock in that particular intersection that maybe somebody will...
Reward may be a...
We'll place the matter on the agenda.
Thank you. I have several comments. The first is, it was wonderful this weekend, along with my colleagues, Mr. Drayman and Mr. Quintero, to finally dedicate the Adams Square Mini Park featuring the streamlined modern gas station. It was better than anything you could imagine. The mock-ups and the models that we have seen just didn't do it justice. It was a huge turnout. We had 1940 eras Coca-Cola bottles, the small glass ones, and the kids were out playing, and there's even a drinking fountain for your dog. So it was great. And again, I'm not sure if you were aware that we did have a problem with Cerritos Park with some graffiti and some vandalism that had occurred. And I'm asking everyone from Adams Hill area and folks that pass by, you know how hard we've worked on this park, and let's all keep a sharp eye on it, make sure that there's no monkey business or any strange-looking characters hanging around. Please call our police department. They'll be happy to come down and check it out, and I wouldn't want to see any type of vandalism or graffiti deface that park, which is really turned out to be quite a highlight of the community. And while I was there, and perhaps this is a good segue into our appointment of Mr. Christopher Welch, I did receive several comments from residents about the speeding that occurs in and around that area, Palmer and Adams, and several residents suggested speed humps. I would like to refer this to the Transportation and Parking Commission for the review and analysis as to whether speed humps are warranted in that area. We've got several warrants that speed humps must make: street dimensions, traffic load. We do have them at Nibley Park, and I think this is going to be a very popular park with children running around and playing, and perhaps inadvertently darting out into traffic, chasing an ice cream or going across the street for a soda pop. So if TPC would be happy to look into that, I'm sure Mr. Welch could give some firsthand comments on his analysis of the issues there. I've also asked, I am asking for the city attorney, along with the city manager, to come back with a code of conduct for the city council, standards of conduct, standards of decorum, which we could all review and hopefully come to a consensus on as to what type of behavior is acceptable and what perhaps goes a little bit across the line. We're sort of vague, and perhaps we all have different ideas as to what is acceptable and what is not. And if we can bring it out before us and discuss it, perhaps we can all have it in front of us so we all know where the boundary lines are for that. So, Mr. City Attorney, I'm hoping you could work on that and come back to us with something. Thirdly, I would like to welcome back home my brother-in-law, Captain Eric Andrews, from Iraq. He spent the last 2.5 years there. He's not in the room, unfortunately. No, I'm sorry, he's maybe at another meeting. He's still en route from Virginia at the moment. But he's back in the States. He spent a tough 2.5 years right in the heat of the battle in Baghdad and Fallujah and all those spots that we hear about on the TV. So I know his parents, my in-laws, were exceptionally worried about his health and safety. I'm very glad that he has made it back. Lastly, I'm going on today, I apologize. I received a letter from Mr. Scott Fisher, who's the principal of Poway High School. And as you know, this is in the area where the devastating fires occurred in San Diego County. Let me get to the point here. Although Poway lost 90 homes and almost our entire community was evacuated, the Glendale Fire Department came to our rescue. Specifically, our school was saved from the destruction thanks to the brave efforts of your team. And he goes on to say that your firefighters arrived on campus darkened with soot after battling this fire with the same intensity that they would have shown in their own community. I was particularly impressed with both their sense of professionalism and camaraderie. I represent the entire Poway staff and student body in recognizing your efforts in saving our school and community, and hope you will share this letter with those assigned to our area. It was a distinct honor to spend time with your firefighters during this crisis. So, thank you, Glendale Fire Department, Chief Biggs. I think this is a great tribute to our firefighters, who not only we count on to protect us, but sometimes they're unaware that they're going to faraway communities over 150 miles away to protect them during these devastating fires. So thank you very much for your efforts. Mr. Quintero.
Two more comments. Playing off of some of the comments you made, I'd like to have those engine companies or those specific individuals that participated actually come to the podium so we can see their faces and the public can also identify them, the ones that were actually sent and participated. And then the second thing is, you're absolutely right. The mini park, when you use the term mini in front of a park, you can't help but think, it's only a mini park, it's small. But what a difference a corner, a greened-out corner, makes in a multifamily neighborhood. And every time we go to these dedications, or every time I drive by some of these, quote, mini parks, we just need to do more. So I hope somewhere out in the world a property owner is listening, and he'll come to the city of Glendale, and we can negotiate with him and build numerous mini parks throughout South and West Glendale, because it's the best thing we can do financially. It's the cheapest, it's the most effective, and it just works wonders for that immediate neighborhood. But yeah, the other Saturday was really very rewarding. The park staff did a tremendous job on that corner, and I'm looking forward to going there for other events.
Thank you. Any staff comments? Okay. Next item, please.
Following items are consent items, including the minutes following are routine and may be acted upon by one motion. Any member of council or the audience requesting separate consideration may do so by making such request before a motion is proposed.
I have a request to pull item 5G only.
Move the consent calendar except for G.
Second.
A through F. Roll call, please.
Council members Drayman.
Yes.
Quintero.
Yes.
Weaver.
Aye.
Yusefian.
Aye.
Mayor Najarian.
Yes. Read item 5G, please, Mr. Kassakhian.
5G is interim director of Glendale Water and Power regarding amendment to the standard multi-tenant office lease gross agreement for GWP office facilities. At G1 is motion authorizing city manager to execute an amendment between 5112 East Wilson Associates, LTD, and the city of Glendale.
Thank you. I have a speaker card from Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council, staff, and of course the public. I'm Barry Allen. I've asked the city clerk's office and the city attorney's office about leases of property or that the city provides to various entities. For instance, the credit union, the Glendale City Employees Credit Union, which I believe is not an arm of the city government. It could be wrong, but it has a lot of space in the Perkins building. The fire union has space at the fire headquarters, which is part of the MOU, but it says they'll give up that space if the city needs it. We have, of course, the old police building that sits there and still hasn't, we still haven't decided what to do with it. Is it more important that we use it as a set for movies and television, or is it more important that we use the accountability, the stewardship we have of our money and our property to be able to use our property instead of leasing property when we already own some? And I think we need to take a serious look at that before we just say, oh, let's go lease some more office space. And I'm quite certain that a good steward of our finances, and I know we're going to hear, well, it's cheaper to lease. We don't know that. I don't think you've had a study on that. And about all this report shows is what the interest will be or how much the CPI will cause the increase over the next 4 or 5 years. It doesn't talk about the other properties that the city owns and could certainly move this research and analysis division of the water department in there. Thank you. Barry Allen asking for your good stewardship.
Thank you. Any other comments on 5G?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Council members Drayman?
Yes.
Quintero?
Yes.
Weaver?
Aye.
Yousefian?
Aye.
Mayor Najarian?
Yes. Next item, please.
Next item is oral communication. Discussion is limited to items not part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Council may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. City manager may refer the matter to the appropriate department for an investigation and a report.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This is the chance where you have the opportunity to speak to the City Council. And I'm going to remind you that you may address council for up to 5 minutes. However, should you voluntarily agree to limit your time to 3 minutes, I can extend the courtesy of placing your speaking card at the top of the pile. We will go through those who wish to speak for 3 minutes and then get into the 5-minute speakers. However, we will limit this round of speaking for 1 hour, not including council comments, questions, or discourse between staff. We will temporarily suspend the oral communications, then take up the action items, and at the conclusion of the action items, we will resume again with those speakers whom we have not had the opportunity to hear yet. With that being said, it's 10 minutes to 7. The first speaker is Bonnie Adams for 3 minutes. Followed by Mike Nagel. And Annie. Was that her name?
Yes.
Annie.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Adams, Glendale resident. I would just like to say, first of all, that we've had these debates about decorum and council decorum and all sorts of things before. But I would like to just caution you guys up there, and the city attorney, to make sure that whatever you decide, and you seem to be romping all over the place tonight, doesn't curtail somebody's First Amendment rights. I don't think abuse is necessary, of course, and rudeness isn't necessary, of course. But I think you're talking to adults here, pretty much, and then hopefully, and I would like to give people a reasonable amount of room to say that they know how to behave in public. And so curtailing their what's acceptable and what isn't, you may not think it's acceptable, but you can't curtail somebody's First Amendment rights. Second of all, I would like to mention that I am volunteering to come to any student group, to any service club, to any groups who might feel that they would like to have speeches, have me demonstrate and talk about dog guides or I will volunteer. It'll get my brain out of park and to get going. And maybe it'll help some people, especially children, so they won't grow up to be stupid, ignorant adults. And there are plenty of those out there. And but I also would like to be talking to the adult population as well. But I will volunteer. The service is free, except for any expense I have to put out, you'll have to eat. And that's it. I want to give my cell phone out so that people can contact me. It's 213-248-1150. So if anybody wants to contact me, they can call there and can find me. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Nagel, you're next.
Okay. Good evening, City Council, Mr. Mayor, staff, and the citizens of Glendale. My name is Mike J. Nagel. I'm here to speak on something I've spoken on a couple of times already, and that is our new audible signals, or I should say our inaudible signals. Now, it took a long time to get them in the first place, and they are of a good design, and I think that the money that the city has spent on them is well spent. But until they are loud enough to be heard, especially over traffic, they're useless. A person who cannot see to cross the street has only his ears to depend upon. If he cannot hear the signal from clear across the street, he doesn't know which way for sure to walk. And most of our intersections, well, quite a few of our intersections that will have these audible signals are not at right angles. If a person guesses and walks directly out from the curb, he may end up in the middle of the intersection when the light changes. It shouldn't take a long time to do this. If these signals cannot be turned up, we need to replace them. We need to replace them right now before it costs us a lot more money than it already has. But I don't think that this is the case. These signals are in use in many cities across the country. They are capable of being turned up. Please do so, and do it soon, because I haven't done a complete survey of the entire city and all the audible signals, but right next to where I live, at Glendale and Chevy Chase, I go out there in the middle of the night, and I cannot hear it. I know which way to walk, of course, since I can see, but it simply is inadequate, and it's not safe. And that intersection has got to be one of the most dangerous intersections in town as far as the reckless way that so many people drive through it, especially on Chevy Chase. Some of those people don't seem to have any conception of what a speed limit is, nor do they seem to be familiar with the concept of yielding right-of-way to pedestrians. That is a police matter, of course. But having inaudible signals, having so-called audible signals that are not audible, only compounds the problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Drayman.
Okay, Mr. Nagel, you've been up here a number of times about this issue, and so I want to volunteer myself to go on a little field trip. So I would like to, though, go on a field trip that is productive, so if we can arrange it through Public Works to take a tour of a couple of those, I would like to go on a weekend. I know it's not as necessary, the traffic patterns aren't the same as maybe the middle of a busy work day, but I'd like to go on a Saturday or Sunday. Let's arrange it and see if Mike will go with us. And
put you under blindfold, John.
Don't know about that. I'm about as boneheaded as it can be anyway, without a blindfold, and
oh no,
accident prone. So anyway, any of my colleagues that would like to come along on a field trip are certainly welcome. But I'd like to go. Let's see about these signals, and let's find out if they are indeed audible even to a dense councilman.
I'm sure
Thank you very much.
Mr. Galanyan and through Mr. Zern's office will book you.
Thank you. Will book me? Good, okay.
Okay, thank you very much. The next speaker is Dr. Richard Espiritu. We're in the 5-minute section of our oral communications.
I can do 3 minutes.
Well, you have to let us know ahead of time.
I am very sorry, I didn't know.
Are you a first-timer to my wonderful
World.
design here of oral communications? If you'd like 3 minutes, please come forward. And Dr. Spiritu, I beg your pardon.
That's fine.
Let me see, where's your card? Ruben Amirian.
I apologize for that. I don't know these things. Good evening. My name is Ruben Amirian, Honorable Mayor and Council members. I'm here to kind of plug arts, especially visual arts and painting. There is an exhibition coming up this coming Friday, the 16th, at Harvest Gallery, located at 938 North Brand Boulevard. The opening is 7 to 10 p.m. and the exhibition is going to continue for 1 month. The artist is Seta Injayan. She's an artist who graduated from UCLA about 25 years ago, and she studied with one of the giants of abstract expressionism, Mr. Richard Dibbencorn. As you well know, there is only one commercial gallery in Glendale, commercial gallery, and that is Harvest Gallery. We should all help to keep that going, because that is the only outlet for local artists. I am here also on behalf of a few friends that I kind of surveyed, not everyone I could do, to ask you to put visual art and artists on your list of priorities. We like to be at the bottom of the list, but we don't like to be outside of the list. Please help us by just coming to the exhibitions. We don't ask you to buy any painting. We just want your moral support. In the past, we have seen Mr. and Mrs. Quintero being very helpful, coming and encouraging us. We thank you for that, sir. And we are asking for your help, only for moral help, not financial. Thank you.
Why don't you give the date, time, and location again, Mr. Mayor?
The date is November the 16th. The location is 938 North Brand Boulevard. The name of the gallery is Harvest Gallery, and the name of the artist is Seta Injayan. I have no financial interest in this thing. I am not a partner, nothing. I'm just someone who likes art and loves art.
And the time?
And the time is, the opening is from 7 to 9 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Amirian.
Thank you.
Dr. Richard Espiritu.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, and staff. And most important tonight, members of the audience here and those who are listening on Channel 6. My presentation tonight is be prepared and be informed. Mr. Kassakhian, lights, please. This is developed by the Department of Justice, Chapter 7, Emergency Medical Management, under Title II of ADA. This addresses program services for emergency service. The basic issue is that this is a vital responsibility for state and local governments to protect residents and visitors. Operative word, visitors. From harm, and including preparedness for in responding to medical emergencies and disasters. These are the list of things that have to be considered: notification, communication, evacuation, emergency shelter, transportation, lodging, social services, emergency and disaster preparedness benefit programs, emergency medical care and services. This is from Addendum 1 of this 100-page document. This was done July the 26th, 2007. General procedures. This first one talks about contracts with other people. Second one talks about preparedness. Number 3, seek input and participation from people with disabilities and organization expertise. Unfortunately, this winds up to be a no. If the answer of any of the above question is no, then a red flag for that emergency management program may not be fully accessible to people with disabilities. This is more of the planning program. This is statement number 4. Have we decided the extent of the emergency that we need to look at? Number 5, identify the resources. Number 6, it's really not that important. Number 7, plan addresses requirement assistant leaving their homes. We need to have a list of people with disabilities in our community. Number 8, written procedures to ensure community evacuation with wide variety of disabilities receive evacuation, people who receive evacuations assistance. Number 9, establish a voluntary confidential registry for persons with disabilities. Also to make sure that that registry has some safeguards for confidentiality. Number 10, issue of emergency transportation. Number 11, policies and procedures to make sure that people are not separated from their families, especially those with disabilities. Number 12, policies and procedures to make sure that service animals are evacuated and transported. These were the issues that I brought up last week about service animals. This is another action items. We have already gone over this particular issue. We should also consider stress zones for people with mental disabilities. We go through a lot of these different things here. One of these is medication and medical equipment. I've had discussions with members of staff, but there's a whole bunch of reasons why that talks about why this needs to be done. For example, medical insurance companies don't continue with this. I'm going to go through this very briefly because I want to get to my final comments on this thing. In 2006, I met with the fire department. I gave them the names, the phone numbers of people who will work to help put together this voluntary directory. At the Glendale Homeowners Association, the chief said they're just starting to put this together. In 2006, I also met with the fire department, gave them names, phone numbers, and contact people for durable medical equipment and pharmacies. I have spoken with these people as of last week, and nobody from the fire department has spoken to them. These are issues that have to be addressed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Spiritu. Mr. Starber?
Yes, Mr. Spiritu, before you sit down, a question for clarification. The form you're reading from, is this a copy of something you've received from us?
No, this is a copy that was given to me by the U.S. Department of Justice.
I guess my question is, who filled in the boxes? Is this your assessment of our programs? Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
Yes, that is my assessment. I've also gotten documents from the state of California, FEMA, and Homeland Security.
Thank you, Dr. Spiritu. Jim Hissey?
Good evening, Mayor Najarian, members of council and staff. My name is Jim Hissey, and I'm a lifelong resident of the city of Glendale. Had Mr. Zern been here tonight, I would have thanked he and his office for some recent help that they've given me and some issues I was having in and around my house as it applies to people with disabilities, and they have done an excellent job in putting those forward. Kind of like my friend Margaret Hammond sitting over here. I was moved after last week's council meeting and also part of the council meeting that I saw earlier today to come down here tonight and talk about some comments that came from members of this council that I'd like to discuss, not because I disagree with them, but because I agree with them. Last week, Mr. Weaver made the comment, and I think it was during the DRB discussion, that the city has been overbuilt, and that's absolutely correct. But for residential property, it involves North Glendale. But for the business district south of what is now the 134 freeway, the business district started being overbuilt in the early 1970s. So the fact that it continues to be going up is not an issue that involves residential. Now, Mayor Najarian, you said earlier today that previous councils have tried to downzone sections of South Glendale to help improve the quality of life down there. And I appreciate whatever this council is doing and what previous councils have done to try and downzone that area, because for much of my life I lived south of the 134 freeway. Now, last week, Mr. Drayman, you said, and I think you said it again earlier today, let go of the past and concentrate on what the current council can do on working for the future. And I certainly agree with that. I have heard some individuals say that they would like to see council districting because they believe that the approximately 107,000 people living south of the 134 freeway are underrepresented on this council. I would like to remind them, like it or not, some of my former neighbors and friends were displaced when that freeway was built, and most of the city's single-family residences fell in South Glendale. We didn't feel underrepresented then, nor were we concerned over a lack of parks down there, as this was the only affordable housing for those of us in the middle class. To try and hold this council accountable for suggestions, not requirements, in an 11-year-old DRB report is not warranted unless the city plans on either purchasing or condemning property in South Glendale and the developing parkland on it. I do commend the recent dedication of that mini park in Adams Hill. I know exactly where that is. And yes, Mr. Quintero, you're absolutely correct. If we can put more of those in, I'm all for it. Besides, if parkland issue was warranted, why wasn't it dealt with by the many prior councils that it came to? The parks that are down there now have been there for a very long time, with the exception of the recent mini parks. I might remind some individuals that this very chamber is in a building that has been here long before the 134 freeway was ever conceived. Therefore, this council's workplace falls south of the 134 freeway, and so this council and the councils before you represent all the people of the city, not only those that live in North Glendale, but those that live in South Glendale. And I applaud you again for what you've done to improve the quality of life. That being said, briefly, I do know 2 undeveloped pieces of property that might go towards the community gardens that you talked about. And for Mr. Drayman, it might help my friend Mr. Hoffman with two ends plant a squash garden, but there's no fencing down there to keep the birds and the squirrels out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hissey. Next speaker is Bob Yousefian.
5 minutes?
That's a 5-minute card.
Thank you. That's the 5 minutes, that's correct. Mr. Mayor, I'm here today as your airport commissioner. I am going to give you a brief report of what I have completed in the last 2.5 years. On the issue of security, we have constructed the Terminal B, and it's not just me, as I said, it's we, which means all 9 of us, and the Airport Commission. Construction of Terminal B, third security checkpoint lane addition, approved by the City of Burbank, a Terminal B baggage inspection project, which just got approved, I think, last week. Capital projects included parking lot A, reconfiguration and a valet parking center, which people actually enjoy very much. Parking lot A relocation, taxiway D design and construction, runway 1533 and 826. We actually have only 2 runways, so both of those runways were paved. Believe it or not, we paved them at night and used them in the morning. FAA grants, over $32 million in grants for airfield improvements, and Part 150 noise mitigation was done. TSA reimbursement license agreement for utilities and janitorial services. Must tell you that's the only TSA reimbursement agreement that currently exists in the state, in the country actually at this point. Staff did a very good job. Noise, as far as environment is concerned, ongoing residential acoustical treatment. I served on the environmental board, and we have spent, while I was there, about $12.9 million expenditure. We have gone from module 8.2 to 9.3. That's 8.2, 8.3, 8.4, 8.5, and so on and so forth. Noise impact area since 2005 that I took office. The direction I got from council was to reduce the noise area. The noise area has gone down from 89 acres in 2005 to 69 acres as of second quarter of 2007. We replaced shuttle buses and acquisition of complete new engine technology, which basically reduced emissions, NOxes by 40%, and all the other PM emissions by 96%. It was approved by the AQMD. As far as the emergency preparedness, there was recently a training that took place with the federal government, and as you know, airport has gone ahead and joined the ISIS, and so they are running the ISIS project. We also purchased the state-of-the-art replacement airport fire truck, and as former president, I was working on the 15-year extension of the TBI contract, which basically is all the workers of the airport operate under that contract. We are getting ready. Actually, almost 99% of the work has been done on a 161 study, and it will be launched in January, and hearings will be held. I am taking this opportunity to explain what I had done yesterday. As many of you read in the paper, and as usual, the paper is not always accurate, I did step down from the presidency of the airport. I felt that it was important for me to do this because I felt it was important for me to insulate the airport and the Airport Commission from any of the politics that takes place in this city. You just heard my last report on the Airport Commission. Effective immediately, I am stepping down as the commissioner for the airport. I'm also effective immediately stepping down as the chair of Redevelopment Agency. I'm further not taking office for the Southern California Association of Government, which I was duly elected. I think it's important for me to do this because I think it's important for me to remove all that my counterparts have on me. I would like to be a free man. Mr. Quintero told me once, actually his son told me, that I was a retail politician. I really didn't know what that meant, but later on I found out what a retail politician is. A retailer is a person who deals with their customer direct. And gentlemen, you're not my customers. They are. And my pledge to them is for the next year and a half to work on their behest because they are my customers. I will be their council member, and I will do what I feel is the right thing to do for this city. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure serving the airport and the rest of them. Good day.
Mr. Howard, do we need to formally accept the resignation, or does that suffice?
Well, that would suffice. Obviously, as sitting as either the commissioner, for the commission, more you have to check with them to see what they would want, because the commissioners serve not only at the pleasure of the council, but pursuant to the joint powers agreement. So I don't know if they would consider this effective, but you can.
I think then we should probably place on the agenda the selection of a replacement to the airport authority. Is that appropriate?
Yes.
Is there any legal?
Councilmember Yousefian, no. The member serves at the pleasure of the council, and Mr. Yousefian has effectively, and again, he can certainly repeat it if he likes, but I heard a resignation from the Airport Commission. The words I wrote down was stepping down as commissioner for the Airport Authority.
Effective immediately.
Effective immediately, correct. And effective immediately means effective immediately. It didn't condition it upon any other date. So we can certainly put that on the agenda, and I likewise heard that he stepped down as chair of the redevelopment agency as well, effective immediately, unless I heard wrong.
You're absolutely right. And so is SCAG.
And SCAG as well. SCAG was not accepting the appointment, I think.
Right.
Okay, well, I think...
I'll put on the agenda all of those.
Well, the redevelopment, is it, would that be done at the redevelopment agency?
We'll place that on the agency.
We'll place that on the GRA, on the agency agenda for next week.
Unless...
we do have a vice chair.
We do have a vice
chair, so it really depends if you want to appoint a chair or let the vice chair continue to handle it until April.
We should do that in the GRA forum.
Correct.
Okay, very good.
Sorry.
Mr. Yousefian?
I forgot one thing. May I get an opportunity to say? I also would like to take this opportunity to thank Phil Lanzafame. I know he's in the audience. In my speech, I kind of forgot to thank Mr. Lanzafame and also all the staff from Redevelopment Agency. It was a pleasure working with you guys for over 18 months. You guys do a good job, and appreciate that very much. But I'm pretty sure that you will also continue to work very diligently with the new president. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you. The next speaker is Barry Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council, staff, and the public. I'm Barry Allen. Be a little bit anticlimactic, I guess. So many things. I wanted to go to the closed session prior to the closed session of the Housing Authority today, but I looked at it and there was no time. No time set on that particular document. But that's okay. It's and I won't even turn that in as a Brown Act violation. I looked at the...
we're looking at, but it's
right here. Mr. City Clerk, there's no time.
This is the Housing Authority closed session. It notes closed session 1 o'clock to commence at 2 p.m. on my copy of the agenda.
What?
Right on my copy.
It's on the agenda.
What's that?
It's on my copy.
Well, this is a copy from the packet, and there's no time.
It's an advanced copy.
Oh, okay. Well, there was no time on it.
Let's not interrupt.
I think he's reading from one of the advanced tentative copies of the agenda.
Yeah, this is what was with the packet.
The published agenda does have the times.
Okay, and this was the packet agenda. I don't know how you gentlemen were able to get here on time. The other thing I was noticing is that the revised agenda, item B, I can certainly understand that, a change in the number of the section, but there's no change in the date or the time when it was typed. So I guess the dates and time when these are typed, they don't count. There's an issue of the Public Records Act, And we have requested Public Records Act on OSHA, redacting the names of the employees of both the police and fire department. And we still haven't been able to get that information, although the U.S. Department of Labor says we're certainly entitled to that. And I have provided that to the city attorney's office already. The next thing I want to go to is the issue of last week. We heard Mr. Yousefian touch on it. We've heard another speaker touch on it. But the thing that bothers me the most is our values, the values that are set by this council. Now, we're very concerned about, sticks and stones, but we're very concerned about the fact that words are very dangerous. But yet, you have a council member who we have requested to have an ethics violation filed against him. He sits there on this dais. He has had investigations ongoing from the FPPC and from the L.A. County District Attorney's Office and from the IRS. Councilmember Quintero several years ago said, let's get an audit of the Dreaming of Roses, and never got an audit. However, one of your city directors sits on as a board member on that particular body and can certainly request it, as attorneys have told me that they're entitled to if the audit committee or the board of directors doesn't get the information they want. And that's something that Mr. Quintero could have asked for, and maybe one day he will. But we really have to look at the message we're giving to our children. Don't use bad words, but become the subject of ongoing investigations involving corruption, involving the use of city materials, city personnel, city staff, the things that, the accountability question, the things that this council is accountable for, and use those things with impunity. And that is the issue, that is the question, and that is the message that the children are receiving. It's okay to take things that don't belong to you, but don't use bad words. I want you to think about that when you look at the issue of decorum. And decorum is very important, but I think it's what we perceive, what the public perceives when they watch it on the internet, when they watch it on Channel 6. And we need to look very carefully at what our image is. And Mr. Yousefian has had A ratings, as has Mr. Drayman, as has Mr. Quintero. And if I were to say that, wow, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Mr. Quintero.
Yes, I want to be clear for the people who don't follow these things closely. While a city council member, I once asked for an audit of the Dreaming of Roses as well as the Rose Float Association. However, I have never been, and I just want to make sure you are clear, I have never been a member of the board of Dreaming of Roses or the Rose Float or any other association.
No, that is correct. I said director, not a council member.
Right.
The Parks and Recreation.
Let's just be real clear about that. I've never been on any of those boards.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Ute Baum.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and City staff. I'm here to speak about trees, and specifically oak trees, and maybe educate all of us a little more by telling you what an amazing machinery a tree is. I myself had to do some little bit of research to pass on this information. A typical 40-foot tree operates pumps, valves, filters, pipelines, and processes cells with an efficiency surpassing any conceived by man. No wonder this intricate mechanism has for centuries inspired awe in scientists and dirt gardeners alike. The roots feeding and supporting an aerial structure overhead may extend as far as 3 times the width of the tree itself. The nutrients are supplied by thousands of tiny feeder roots. The trunk and prop and pipe minerals up the tree to distribute them throughout the tree and store nutrition for the spring. The crown, here's the trunk. The crown is where photosynthesis takes place as leaves tip toward the light to produce food and life-giving oxygen. This 40-foot tree releases about 60 cubic feet of oxygen into the air on a given day. Think of trees as a lifetime investment. The investment will give us dividends by its great beauty, its cooling shade, its shelter for wildlife, and improvement to air quality. I have a mature sycamore in my yard, and I consider myself fortunate when I still get the occasional hawk taking a rest on a high branch. There were many blatant transgressions, and I can attest to some, in past years regarding protection of these wonderful machines. Ample reasons why a revised indigenous tree ordinance was developed with the scrutiny of many meetings, many people's input, and finally, City Council approval. Anyone living in oak woodland country in the city better well be aware of the indigenous tree ordinance, better well be aware of the necessity of a permit, and better well hire a reputable tree trimmer. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Linda Lalayan.
See, which way is it? This way? To this way? This way. Okay.
Ready?
Hold on. Good evening. My name is Linda Lalayan, and I'm here again for the problem that we are having locally on campus, East Harvard and Maynard. I emailed these images to you, council members, city staff, Mr. Zern and Mr. Starbird, several weeks ago, and I have not received any response from you. Basically, I am requesting, actually we are all requesting, but I was able to take pictures of this, I don't know if it's an 18-wheeler or it's a huge big rig, and it wasn't able to go around East Harvard and campus. And after much maneuvering, it tried to, go to campus, but it, I don't know where this was, but it backed up. It went to back to East Harvard. As you can see, the guy's directing this guy, and he went over the sidewalk and the wrong way on Maynard. So I want to take these images and tell you that our problems are still there, and we've been here for 7 months, and we're not seeing anything done by the council members. Council members told us that we don't need petitions. However, we went ahead, and then other times you said we need petitions. We have the petitions. Now we're waiting for the commissioners, and we don't know if they're going to say yes or no. Anyway, there are lots and lots of different issues here, this being one. I am requesting that some type of sign go up where these huge trucks and heavy loads of buses and cars aren't able to go through our streets because, as you know, we have blind spots. This is although the football season is over, I'll be showing some pictures of what went on at that point, but this is a Sunday, and there's no parking on campus, and I'm not sure if I have a picture. This is how some people were parked, and as you can see, there were some nice elderly couples and individuals that were going to a civic activity at Glendale High School. So, And I just want to, I don't know if I have enough time, but I just want to say, looking over the communication, interdepartmental communication from Mr. Zern to Mr. Starbird, I was happy to see that a lot of the background and the summary of traffic and parking issues were addressed. However, the Campus Street gate, which was said that it only serves several important functions by providing the most direct access to athletic and maintenance facilities, stadium and locker rooms, is not the only thing. All civic functions, the gate is open, Mr. Starbird. The gate is not closed after 3:20 p.m., as the report says. It is open after 3:20 p.m. until 12 midnight. All civic functions, people have access through the back gate. GCC classes have access through the back gate. All weekend and weekday activities have access through the back gate. I don't want to take more time, but the gate is open, and as a result, we still are having problems with parking. As you can see, on a Sunday, these are not children, AYSO children. These are adults who are making a lot of noise. We are asking for some type of resolution here where we have the right to a peaceful life and existence in our community, and we are not getting it because this is continually going on in our neighborhood. I just want to make sure that I cover everything. I just want to show these pictures. The gate is open all the time, and these are the buses that are still going through during the games. These are trucks during the day that come through the gate all the time. Actually, this is a Sunday. Some reports said that they're not there anymore, but they are. So we still have these issues. This is the crowd during the football games. We need some help here. So I just want to ask the council, when are we going to see little changes in our neighborhood, because it is so huge that we need to take one little thing at a time. And we're asking for the parking signs and for the speed bumps, because they are narrow streets. And to be honest with you, I think those streets should have 15 miles per hour because of the narrowness and because of the dead corners or blind corners. So please,
thank you,
do
Mr.
something.
Quintero.
Yeah, okay, well, the parking and speed bumps, and then trying to keep the heavy trucks off of those streets and the buses, that's certainly within our purview. When do you think we're going to have some answers for the neighbors, or when is it going to go in front of the TPC, et cetera?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we have received a request from the residents. We have verified the signatures and addresses, completed the report, and scheduled to go in front of TPC on November 26th.
Okay. Then the next question really doesn't deal with the city of Glendale, and I think you need to go to the school district to talk about that gate that, as you mentioned, is perpetually open. That is the Glendale Unified School District's purview. It's their gate. And so I recommend that the neighbors go talk to the school district officials to see what you can work out with them.
Well, they refuse to close it. However, I think if the city makes some changes, for example, also I didn't mention that a no left and a no right turn from Maynard between the school hours, like 7:30 to 8:30, 2:30 to 3:30, just like other schools have, Toll has, Hoover has. If the city does some changes, it is going to limit the usage of the back gate. And
those changes will be forthcoming. The first step will be with the TPC commission, where your neighbors have to show up and have to make presentations, and perhaps that will help. But ultimately, the point I'm trying to make is that gate is the school district's gate, so they are the ones that open and close it at will. We don't have any ability
No, I
to tell
understand
them
that.
what to do.
I understand that. That's just, it's an additional problem that we have. But the first things first, parking, and, I was told that
Thank you,
the
Ms.
commission
O'Reilly.
can refuse it. So what do we do then? How long do we have
Then
to
you're
go
going
on?
to appeal it to the city council in the event they say no.
Okay.
Mr. Drayman?
Thank you.
Just have one quick question. This is a wonderful ad for United Van Lines, but
And by the way, they were not picking up or dropping
That's
off
what I was
anything.
going to ask
No,
you if you were aware.
I asked them, and they said no comment.
They just took
they
a
were
wrong
just.
turn. Just
It's
took
a
a wrong
shortcut. Yeah.
okay. All right. Thank you. That was.
That driver won't make that one again.
By the way, I did get your photographs, and they are much more interesting on the big screen. Not interesting, I know it's difficult, but I mean they're much more impactful, is what I'm trying to say, on the large screen.
Thank you for your time.
Next speaker is Vache Mangasarian.
I would like to speak later. Is that possible?
No, we can't arrange. Because later might be very later. Do you mean later at the end of the meeting? Because I could put you at the very end.
Not very end. Well, no.
Because we only have about 15 more minutes of this.
Okay, I'm ready to go.
Some are going to be bumped to the end.
Good evening, Glendale. I'm Vache Mangasarian. I got to look at you all. Last week at this dais, 4 of you gentlemen proved to us that this city council has become a cesspool of corruption, a den of immoral conduct. You proved to us that you are morally bankrupt and simply a bunch of hypocrites. I hope I would not be the only one who is voicing this indignation. Shame, 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 shame on you, gentlemen. 4 grown men. Oh, well, what can I say? 4 men who did not have the dignity to look at their colleague's eyes and, like a man, talk to him about their grievances. You could not do that because you are part of a group who has orchestrated a campaign of political assassination of a character. It was sad and laughable to see you 4 grown men hiding behind the skirts of 4 unscrupulous women. And you did let them do your dirty work. They read your written statements, your attacks, your comments against Mr. Yousefian. Your lapdogs did your barking for you. Shame on you. What amazes me is our rookie city councilman, Mr. Drayman, which I had a high regard for him. Mr. Drayman, who had the audacity to accuse Mr. Yousefian of misbehaving and sucking the air out of this room, and simply suggest that he was petrified that one day Mr. Yousefian would take the baseball bat and attack him and his car. And as long as you were at it, why didn't you say Mr. Yousefian might have taken a machete or a machine gun or brought in a bulldozer? I mean, you know. Mr. Drayman, you got your guarantee regarding the Rock Haven, and you became one of the stone throwers. And that is really sad. Mr. Yousefian served this city with dignity and care. You have not graduated from Montrose yet. He is the only man who reads the documents and has vast amount of knowledge about the city of Glendale. He is the only one who calls the mistakes and informs us that the city staff or the city management or some of you are incompetent. Should it be a reason to gang up on him, falsely accuse him, and assassinate his character? Mr. Weaver, you are a shameless liar. Mr. Yousefian never attacked you. You had a disagreement.
Mr. Mangasarian, a little decorum, please. We're trying to
Yes,
stay
this is
away
my
from
5
those.
minutes. I have to say what I have to say.
Yes, but with
Yes.
decorum, please.
Yes.
Permitted to call me a liar.
Yes.
Killer. Go right ahead.
Mr. Yousefian never attacked you. He probably yelled at you when you made the false accusation against him and Mr. Quintero on one of the articles that was written on Glendale News Press. The piece of rag that you should tear it up, Mr. Najarian.
Give me one.
In the past, as Mayor Yousefian protected a lot of you, especially you, Mr. Weaver, and he sort of stopped the ugliness that is going on today at this dais. You are the biggest hypocrite because you remind me of the worst Southern politicians, the worst Southern, well, I shouldn't go there. You are the advocate of anti-mansionization, and you have the audacity to build a house in your neighborhood, which is the biggest house. But nobody, none of these lovely people gets up here and complains. But every day we hear about mansionization, but nobody says anything to you. My dear friend, Mr. Quintero, you know how much I like you and I respect you. Please, please leave the vendetta on A and C aside, and please don't let that cloud your judgment. Please help us to clean up this mess, to have a decent city council, to we have decent behavior here, that we all can get along and we all can worry about this city. Mr. Yousefian might lose his cool. My time is up? Puzzle tough. Okay, I'll come back again. Well,
thank you.
I'll be back.
Wonderful.
I'll be back.
Commentary. Well, I don't know if I would applaud, but everyone. No, I think we're trying to get past the name calling, and certainly your opinions. I think did address the things that we're trying to avoid, Mr. Mangasarian. That is name calling. That's calling people liars, calling people a cesspool, and being immoral.
Mr. Mayor, you've been doing that last week, constantly against one city councilman.
It's on video, fortunately. So you
and I watched that 3 times on 3 reruns, and you should be ashamed of yourself.
Well,
all of you.
That's an incorrect interpretation of what happened. Next speaker is Mr. Garbetian.
Thank Ben.
I chose the wrong day to come back.
You did.
I think I'm going to tell a joke instead of a statement. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, good evening. My name is Bartan Garpetian. I'm not here to steer the dirty water. I'm just here to voice my opinion, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my family. This is not for or against any of the council members, so let's not start that tomorrow. I'm kind of disturbed and concerned and disappointed about all the remarks and lies that goes around in this dais. People show up here and speak about me. They make accusations, false accusations, and there was a speaker here last week mentioned my name and then talked about racism and race card, and also he wants to see a united Glendale. I don't know when did I ever said I don't want to see a united Glendale, but talking about racism, I don't know which side of the racism he's ever been to or subjected to, but I'm clearly being discriminated against right now because I came to this dais and spoke and voiced my opinion and my concerns, which I have the right to do so. Right after I did that, they started this rally of, I don't want to use the same words this gentleman used, character assassination against me, and they went on and on, but I don't know where we're going to. Is this the time that we can come here and speak? If that's the case, let us know, because this is not dictatorship. Last time I checked, we live in a democracy, and this is not communism, government and one party and shut everybody else up. That's not going to happen. I don't know where we're heading to. Most of these people who talk about me or made statements, they don't even know me. If you want to know me, buy me a cup of coffee, sit down 10 minutes, then you find out what kind of a person I am. Many of you know me. Mr. Drayman, I've never gotten a chance to talk to you or sit down with you. But the rest of you, you know me. You know what kind of a person I am. I'm not the guy who wants to get into street fights with many of these people. I'm a family man. I have 3 kids. I joined the commission system to serve my community, and that's what I did. And if I disagree with some people, sometimes you have to agree to disagree. Otherwise, why have a board? Why have a five-man commission? Let's have one person make all the decisions. And I have to tell you, 99.9% of people in this town, they have no problems with me. And I don't have a problem with anybody. I'm not against any of the speakers. I'm not against homeowners associations. I'm not against real estate associations. None of that. They say I have a conflict because I joined an association, and if I have time, I can maybe elaborate on it for a minute or so. I don't have a conflict. I've been a member of National Association of Realtors, Glendale Association of Realtors, ICSC, which is, for the audience, is International Council of Shopping Centers. I've also been a member of Verdugo Woodlands West Homeowners Association. It doesn't mean anything. All these associations that I'm a member of, there are some points that I agree with, there are some points that I disagree with. I can't agree with every point of all the associations that I'm a member of. So I don't have a conflict being a commissioner. You know, the issue is, if an association comes out and says, oh, you have a conflict, they should look into their presidents who sit in planning commission, and when we know it was a chair of a planning commission that I had no problem with, but the planning commission makes the biggest decisions. They make recommendation to the city council for all the zoning changes that goes on in this town, or in any city. So if there's a conflict, that gentleman may have more conflict than I do. I don't want to bring anybody's name up because I have respect for people. But all this talk about me, if they want to know me, they can sit down and talk to me. All of you have my numbers. You can call me and ask me if you have any questions. Don't assume things that I want to get, I want to thank them for giving me all the credit to put a huge organization together with hundreds of members that is going to go do this and that in 3-4 months. But get your facts in order and then make judgments. Don't just assume things and keep repeating the same lie over and over and over again. And then if nobody says anything, I didn't want to come here tonight and speak because I don't want to just add to this atmosphere here. But if the same thing is being said over and over again, nobody says anything, somehow it's acceptable. It gets accepted, and it's kind of turns into reality, basically. That's why I'm here tonight. Again, I'm a member of different organizations. I don't have a problem with being a member of different organizations. And I want everything to be fair. There should be a balance. Look at our Supreme Courts. They have liberal judges, right, left, conservatives. There is a reason for it. There should be a balance in everything. So, having said that, again, dictatorship doesn't work. Let's not go there. Look what happened to Saddam Hussein.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Yousefian.
I have a question from Mr. Karapetian. This issue has come up several times. I'm going to ask you a question about a mailer that several speakers have talked about. I think one of the door hanger, door hanger, and some people have been saying it's a bait and switch and this and that. Is the mailer designed to get membership to people who fill that mailer and send it back to you? I won't fill in the rest. Tell me what that mailer is designed to do, and why did you put that door hanger together?
I didn't put the door hanger together.
Or your organization.
Because everything is coming down on me because I think, I did everything, which is okay by me. I'm not afraid of anybody. Let me put it that way.
Because currently you are the face.
It's okay. It's okay.
That organization.
I'll answer you very briefly. The mailer came out. We wanted to do something good for the community. We sent the mailer out. It says, let me see if I can remember what it says exactly. It says, if you are agreeing to ask the city council to allocate necessary funds for a brand library to be completed or renovation to be completed, sign here and send back. We did not ask, or this organization did not ask. This is all I can tell you because I'm not authorized to speak on behalf of the organization. We did not ask for a penny from anybody. We did not receive a penny from anybody. This organization did not get a membership from those things. By signing that, you don't become a member automatically. Nobody was called afterwards and solicited for membership. None of that. And we have almost this much of it. The plan was to bring this out and say we have this much support, go talk to the library, say you have this much support, this many signatures. We want to go to council and say if you can allocate the necessary funds for a brand library. And I don't know what's wrong about that. They say it's fraud, they got paid. No, not a dollar. The organization, I believe, spent over $7,000 on these mailers. and we did not receive a penny. Switch and bait, Mr. Quintero, you know me for a long time. I mean, it was a little bit low, I guess, but it's okay. It happens. I understand. It happens between friends too. Not a problem. But the issue is, this organization did not receive a penny, a membership, did not call anybody and said, come become a member. None of that. And I don't know what is wrong about asking the council and they said, oh, it doesn't need to be saved. Fine. Cross that save and say, no, remodel it, whatever you want to call it. We didn't say it's falling apart. We didn't say if it's not falling apart, if it's in a really good condition, why do we need $6.7 million for that place? And this is the most historic property that we have in this city, to me. And if speaking about it is wrong, hey, I'm wrong. What can I say? I mean, but not let's twist everything about politics. This was not about politics.
Thank you, Mr. Garbett.
Thank you.
Mr. Drayman.
I'm sorry, but this is absurd. And I see so many heads back there, and I'll guarantee you that at home people are doing the same thing. It's fortuitous that our director of libraries is here. I'm not going to put her on the spot yet again, but she was here at a recent meeting, and so was Mr. Zern here. And I asked both of them, what does this mean, save the Brand Library? I also got phone calls from the president and the board members of the Glendale Historical Society, the people who really it is their interest to preserve and protect that facility. No one seems to know what the devil anybody is talking about. Now, Mr. Yousefian, when I brought it up before, jumped in to say, oh, well, there's many people out there that are very concerned about this facility. That's right. It's called the public in general. And there's been no indication from this council or anybody on this city staff that money will be deferred or taken away or spent in any other way than to make the improvements, remodel, upgrades that have been recommended here. And I'll tell you what the bait and switch is, and here's where the twisting comes about that you don't seem to understand. The twisting is that you claim you have nothing to do with the organization of this group, and yet the website that's out there is in your name. The phone number for the organization is your office phone number. The address listed is your office address. And on the website, it states categorically positions that this organization is taking, which are in direct opposition to city policy and the specific role of the DRB. In addition to that, there was not a single mention on the website of the Brand Library. The door hanger, folks, says, save the Brand Library. If you care to save this wonderful historic icon in the city of Glendale, contact this website, gpoa.info, and fill out an application. Well, guess what? Nothing on there about the Brand Library until when? Until the controversy blew up for those particular individuals, and suddenly the website is transformed. Suddenly there's mention of the Brand Library. And the only thing that was on there, on that site at the time, the only thing that was on there at the time that door hanger went out in northwest Glendale, it's since been distributed throughout the rest of the city, but at that time was fill out this application to become a member of our organization, GPOA, and send us your $25. I don't know who did, and I don't care who did.
You're wrong.
But
You're wrong.
No, I'm not wrong. And the point is, I'm not wrong, and furthermore, I'm not going to debate it with you. I didn't ask you a question.
Of course you're not going to debate it with me, because you don't want to hear the answer.
Mr. Garbett, Mr. Drayman has the floor, and I would...
And he's done. As well.
Of course, because you don't want to hear it, because you never want to hear the answer. Everything is one-sided. Yeah, everything is one-sided, and you don't want. You ask all these, make all these comments. You don't want to hear the answer, which is okay. Dictatorship to its max.
Wait a minute, I have a question for Mr. Garpetian, and you can have a brief response. No, I just have one question, and he'll have a brief response. Can you briefly tell us what the GPOA is about in terms of the organization, why it was formed, etc.?
Okay. I'm not authorized to speak on behalf of the... I'm not authorized to speak on behalf of the organization. I can tell you what I want, or what I know, okay? The door hanger didn't say, call this thing, go to the website, and pay $25. That's all wrong interpretation. First of all, this organization does not have to have a website. We have organizations in this town for 50 years They don't have a website. They come here time and time again. They advocate different things.
But what's it about? That's his question. This question is, what is
they don't
the
have anything on the
GPOA
website.
about?
I mean, this it is what it says. It's a subscription services. You pay $25 a year if you want. Nobody's twisting your arm. And I bring all those flyers that I got that were sent back. You can contact every one of them and see if anybody paid a penny. This is all wrong interpretation.
No, but that-
No,
No, Mr. Gabich, the question is,
What's
you're
your
talking about the
organization
misconception.
about?
What is the purpose
it's a
of this
subscription
organization?
system service. If you pay $25, this is my understanding. If you pay $25, you become a subscriber. And if there are changes, if you're a property owner, any kind of property, it's not just single-family home. If you're a property owner and there are changes in the code or proposed changes to existing ordinances or new ordinances being proposed, they're going to let you know. What's wrong about that? What is wrong about that?
Well,
I mean,
we asked the questions.
This is the first time
that's
that
all there is.
question-
Now, you want to go
First time
interpret
this
it different
question's
way?
been Answered. So it's basically
Thank you.
a subscription service so that property owners will get information about
Exactly. Because
issues
right now
pertaining
we
to-
hear a lot, oh, we were not notified, we were not notified. We will notify them. What's wrong about that? It's been done for a year, but dictatorship doesn't work.
No, thank you. We are in the overtime period. We've gone a certain amount over. We're going to have two more speakers at 5 minutes each. That's Bruce Philpott and Cynthia Lloyd-Jones. The other speakers, Evelyn Hansen, Mike Mohill, and Margaret Hammond, I would invite you to remain. The action items are not going to be too long. But we're overtime already. I've extended it.
The good news
We're
is-
already an hour and 10 minutes. We had about 10 minutes of
We're not
overtime.
going to run 10 minutes.
Mr. Mayor,
But we won't even be 10.
just
Okay.
want to let you
Mr.
know that
Yousefian.
I'll be leaving at 9 o'clock. I have previous engagement to deal with.
That's fine. Thank you.
Okay, we're ready as soon as the clerk logs you in. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council, city staff, and the public.
Mr. Philpott, do you have anything for us?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
You always do, so that's why I asked. Sorry about that. Follow through. Go ahead.
Thank you, Artie.
Okay, tonight we will finish our discussion on staffing issues, 3 versus 4 on engine companies in the fire department. The Glendale Fire Department staffs with 4 firefighters on fire apparatus, generally speaking, but it also routinely staffs with 3. 2 samples of engine company activity logs revealed that the fire department operates with 3 on engine companies daily. I took a sampling of 30 personnel assignment on the activity logs, and 10 of those, or 33%, recorded engine company staffing with 3 for at least several hours and sometimes for the entire shift. That means that each shift, several engine companies operate with 3 firefighters, sometimes for extended periods of time. The second sampling I took was for 44 personnel assignment logs, and it revealed that 26, or 60% of them, posted individual engine companies staffing with 3 for an average time of 5 hours for each shift. All of the staffing reductions occurred during peak call demands. While staffed with 3, the engine companies handled emergency calls in a routine manner without any adverse consequences. Slide number 1, as you can see up there. was presented to you, if it looks familiar, on June 26th of this year. The Glendale Fire Department showed the slide to the City Council to present the case that engine companies are required to be staffed with 4 firefighters. They offered these required staffing mandates to justify spending just a little under $6 million last year in mandatory overtime. They cited 3 primary reasons. Reason number 1, as you can see, the National Fire Protection Association, which is that NFPA 1710 section, states that the first arriving engine company must have the capability to implement an initial rapid intervention crew. That's that IRC. To meet the requirements of an IRC, there must be 4 firefighters to make entry into a burning structure with the fire hose to extinguish the fire, to remain at the point of entry, to provide the necessary resources to rescue the 2 fire personnel who are making the entry. The fact that this entry method requires 4 firefighters is one of the reasons why the Glendale Fire Department told you it has to staff with 4. But according to Carl Peterson, who happens to be the director of the NFPA, and Gary Giacomo of the California State Firefighters Association, the State Fire Union, who I spoke to today, says it is not possible to mount an interior attack with the first arriving engine company staffed with 4. They both agreed that in order to mount an interior attack on a structure fire with the first arriving engine company, it would have to be staffed with 6 firefighters. The reason is that the 2 of the 4 firefighters have other responsibilities and are not available to make up the entry team. 1 firefighter must remain at the hydrant, ready to release the water when instructed by another firefighter who is at the controls of the pump that regulates the water pressure to the hose line that will be used for the entry team. The second firefighter must remain at the pump control to provide a steady and constant stream of water to the entry team. Both of these requirements or assignments are contained in NFPA 1710. They say it's required. The best a first arriving engine company staffed with 4 can do is to dedicate only 2 firefighters to that entry team. This failed logic is one of the reasons why NFPA 1710 has never been adopted by the state of California or any city within the state, and including Glendale. Reason number 2 shows OSHA, the 2 in and 2 out rule. For the safety reasons, like NFPA requires that 4 firefighters make up the entry team. This is the second reason the Glendale Fire Department has told the City Council that they must staff with 4. OSHA refers to it as the 2 in and 2 out rule, but the same dynamics apply as specified in NFPA 1710. If I can go to the next slide, and I don't know if I am able to do that. I don't know why. Whoops.
Ms. Lloyd-Jones?
There we go.
Thank you. Now, just show me where you left off, please. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, so reason number 2. As the slide shows, OSHA, for safety reasons, like the NFPA, requires that 4 firefighters make up the entry team. This is the second reason the Glendale Fire Department has told this City Council that they must staff with 4. OSHA refers to it as the 2 in, 2 out rule, but the same dynamics apply as specified in NFPA 1710 guideline. The difference is that OSHA does not require minimum staffing on engine or truck companies, but it cannot be ignored like the NFPA because it has enforcement powers. OSHA's requirement is that 4 firefighters must be assembled to make up the entry team. 2 enter and 2 remain outside ready to rescue if needed. But again, this cannot happen if the first arriving engine company is staffed with 4. The first 2 arriving engine companies, if staffed with 3 on a structure fire, are able to mount an interior attack where the 4 on the engine company could not. It takes several minutes for the first engine company to prepare for entry anyway. The hydrant hose has to be laid, and the attack hose line leading from the engine to the entry team has to be laid. The engine company captain is the incident commander until relieved, and he must make critical assessments of the fire as it develops and instruct incoming engine and truck companies on how best to deploy. Reason number 3. The slide states, state mutual aid system requires us to staff with 4 firefighters. Today, I spoke with Assistant Chief Paul Beckstrom of the State Office of Emergency Services, which administers the state mutual aid system. He said there is no requirement that fire companies be staffed with four under the state mutual aid system. He said it's important to let the incident commander know if the engine and truck companies being sent for mutual aid purposes are staffed with 3 or 4 for tactical reasons. Conclusion: all 3 reasons given by the fire department for its justification to staff with 4 appear to be flawed. Why shouldn't we save $6 million annually and staff with 3 firefighters on engine companies? 87% of engine company activity is associated with backing up medical emergency calls, of which over 99% are single victim events. And according to the International Association of Firefighters, the National Fire Union, 93% of fire alarms are false, and 90% of all fire calls can be adequately handled by a single engine company. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council.
Thank you very much. Okay, that is going to conclude Phase 1 of oral communications. As I said, if the 3 speakers would please remain, we'll be here. I don't believe the action items are going to take too long. I can't promise you that, though. And we'll eagerly await your comments. Let's move on to the next item, please.
And their action items at 8A is City Manager regarding update approval and appropriation pertaining to the Military Recognition Banner Program. At 8A, 1 is motion approving program guidelines, banner design, location, and the formalization of the program. At 8A, 2 is resolution appropriating $42,100.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Starbird.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll go to my wing person this evening, Zazid Ayad, for the staff report.
Mr. Mayor, council members, on August 21st, 2007, the City Council directed staff to implement a military recognition banner program to honor the men and women in uniform serving on active duty in Iraq and Afghanistan. Council has also directed staff to work with the Glendale Chamber of Commerce Citizen and Patriotism Committee, along with the community group of volunteers, which included Ms. Myrna Stanley, on developing, implementing, and raising funds for the program. Since then, the committee and the community volunteers have been diligently working together on developing the following military recognition banner program. The Glendale Chamber of Commerce Citizens and Patriotism Committee, along with the volunteer groups, have designated the Glendale Avenue, starting from San Fernando Road and Doran Street, to be the official banner placement site. This site is capable of handling 101 banners, and the committee also identified Glendale at Broadway to be the starting point to carry the banners, to have it going north and south on Glendale Avenue, but that Broadway will be as a starting point. The banners will read, as you could see them on the screen. The first and second banner would read, "Glendale thanks all who serve our country," followed by another banner that reads, "Glendale thanks Bravo Company, 1st Battalion, 160th Infantry deployed from the Glendale National Guard Armory." The third banner, as you can see it on the screen, will then follow by individual personalized banners. We'll have the first and last name along with the branch of service. In order to put the banner program together, there will be some requirement of who would actually qualify or who would be nominated to qualify for the program. First, they have to, the military personnel must be currently serving on active duty in the United States Armed Forces activated following September 11, 2001 in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, or Coast Guard, and deployed to Iraq or Afghanistan. The military personnel must be a Glendale resident or have a family member that reside in Glendale, such as a spouse, father, mother, son, daughter, brother, sister, or grandchild. Residency requirement may be waived if the military personnel are graduates of Glendale High School or reside in Glendale prior to enlisting in the military or were employed in the city of Glendale. The length of time that the committee decided to keep the banners up, individual banners will be removed 60 days after each military personnel returns home. All banners will be removed within 60 days following the end of the conflict. And the third will be the displayed banner for someone who lost their life in the battle. The banners will remain up for 6 months after that date. We also have the design and the size. As you could see, the two banners that would carry the one that thanks all who serves our country, and the individual banners will be identical in the design, with the exception to the banner in the middle that would have a different design that addresses the National Guard Armory. The size of the banners will be 8 feet tall by 3 feet wide. In addition to also putting the banner to thank the military personnel, we are also going to design an 8.5 by 11 full-color print of the banner, which will be presented to the family members or to the military personnel, be mailed to them to their home as an honor for their serving the country, and that would be sent to them either after they would be given to them or sent to them after they come back from service of active duty. The program cost and funding, we have searched in our neighboring communities to see what the cost was for their banners, and also give an estimate to how many banners we need that we could start with. And the committee decided to go with the 101 banners, which is the exact amount of street light poles on Glendale Avenue. So as a start, that's what the committee we're starting with, is requesting funds for the 101 banners. The total cost of the project is going to be $38,500. And in addition to that money, the community groups and the volunteers have raised thus far approximately $3,600, maybe a little bit more by this time. And this money will be allocated towards the first 101 banners that will would take care of basically manufacturing of the banners, installation, removal, and the hardware that's necessary that is needed to hang the banners. The company that we have talked to and have done the work for other cities, including the La Cristana Valley banners, is Gold Graphics. They have done a lot of work for the city of Glendale. They meet all the requirements, and they have a very good understanding of what is needed to install and remove the banners. As council approves and move forward to approve this project, staff is ready to start publicizing and putting ads in the paper, requesting for family members to submit application to nominate the military personnel. And the applications will be reviewed by the Glendale Chamber of Commerce Patriotism Committee, and they will qualify the individuals if they can move forward and actually have a banner in their under their name on Glendale Avenue. We're also going to do publicity with flyers in the city views, and city announcements will be placed throughout City Hall. And as of right now, staff is requesting that you would adopt the proposed resolution, and also to fund the banner program for $38,500.
Thank you, Ms. Ayad. Mr. Quintero?
Okay. Well,
Mr. Yousefian, and Mr. Weaver.
I'm glad we've pretty well finished this up. I think the nomination form is accurate in the way it addresses different possibilities for an individual to have their name on the banner. So I'm in agreement with just about everything. However, I'm a little surprised at the idea of signaling out one particular outfit, because in fact we are talking about individuals, putting individuals' names up on the banner. So I'm not in agreement with the deployed from the Glendale National Guard Armory, et cetera. I'd like to restrict it to individuals who are serving in the combat zone, Iraq, Afghanistan, Horn of Africa, wherever it is that we have troops in harm's way.
Thank you. Mr. Yousefian and Mr. Weaver?
Two issues, Mr. Mayor. First of all, my issue, one of them is number 3. It says display banners in for someone who lost their life in the battle. The banner will remain on display for up to 6 months. I think if someone has lost their lives for this conflict for us, in my mind, I think that banner should stay up until the conflict's over. Because it's different than the person who is currently alive and serving. That banner stays up until he returns or she returns. But I think a person who has made the ultimate sacrifice, I did not see a design for that particular banner, number 1. Number 2 is, it was my understanding that this cost was going to be borne by people who would like to donate to a banner program. So there was no cost to the city with exception of what it would cost to actually put it up and so on and so forth. And you have broken this down to like $381. Now, I rather see public who would like to donate to do that. I know Myrna did just one little thing. Many of us have been waiting to see what the actual cost is. Now, I personally would like to commit to the ones who lost their lives on the line of duty. I don't know how many they are, they're 5, 6, 7, whatever it is. I would be more than happy to pay for those. I think part of this program was to enable loved ones and the public to basically give their appreciation for these men and women who are out there trying to do what is right, which is to defend this country and also to preserve our constitutional rights and freedoms. So I think if the city just pays the $38,000, city just pays $35,000. It's not that big of a money. But if you want to engage the public, I think one way would be is to allow some of us, I'm pretty sure some of my colleagues would like to donate, I'm pretty sure Mrs. Starbird, and everyone in this room probably has someone or knows someone that they would be more than happy to at least put a banner up there. So that was my understanding originally when this came up, and that's what I mean, a lot of us, and I know many people that are waiting to see what the cost is and where do you put it and how it works, so they could come forward. And I think we need to have a clearinghouse somewhere down the line. Who's going to be the clearinghouse? Is it going to be the city? Is it going to be Myrna Stanley? Is it going to be the patriotism group? If somebody wants to buy one of these things, who do you go to? And that's what I would like to know. So those are my two questions. I would like to see if my colleagues concur that a person who lost their lives on a line of duty, besides putting what we do, which is down below, we put their name up there. I'd like to see a banner that thanks them for making the ultimate sacrifice and put their name on. Hopefully this will not be on for too long. Hopefully they'll be coming home soon. But nevertheless, that's one thing to me I think is very important.
Let me go to Mr. Weaver. Keep those questions in mind, Ms. Ayala.
I support the program, but I'm trying to understand a couple of things. 101 signs, does that mean 101 of each one? Or 101 divided by 3? You went by the flagpole, so how are you breaking down? When you order, they have to do the artwork, they have to set it up, whatever. So are you ordering 101 of each one?
No, we're going to have 8 banners that would, the first 2 banners on each side of the street would actually say, thanks all who serve our country, and also the National Guard banner. So those are 4 on each side. I apologize. 4 on each side, the south and the north end, and everything else in between will be individualized banners.
But they will have to be made at the time.
Correct, and that addresses the concern that Mr. Yousefian brings up. about the cost of the banners. In order to be able to do this in the most cost-effective way, we don't have to, however, it's most cheaper for us to print all the 101 banners at one time, because that would be cost-effective. And as we get the names and nomination approved, then we'll add the first and last name and also the branch of service on it, and the printer will then take the banner, put their name on it, and then it hangs it
So
up.
it'll be personalized after the fact with a second printing.
Correct.
Okay. And the banner, which is personalized, what happens to the banner?
The personalized banners, again, would remain up.
And after the 6 months? then what?
After the 6 months,
Or
or 60 days.
They come home, then what?
We'll take the banner down, and the decision that we discussed with the committee is we will keep the banner in a safe place. We'll get it cleaned. We'll keep it in a safe place, because some of the servicemen and women may be called back for active duty. So if they get called back again, then their banner would go up. Now, if they're back and they don't get called back again, then
They get the banner?
Yeah, they get the banner, and then we also give them that 8.5 by 11 exact print of the banner that they get it
I
framed.
don't know how many more years this war is going to go on, but you actually think that ordering 101 makes sense? I don't know how many there are in Glendale. I mean, I think I sent Bravo Company off to Iraq when they were being deployed.
Yes.
And I don't think that many lived in Glendale, and I don't know how many others are in Glendale. So you're buying for 90-some potential Glendale residents. Do we have any idea how many Glendale residents have been deployed? Or
We actually tried to find the numbers prior to coming to tonight's meeting, and we were unable to get the numbers because it's confidential information. However, putting an ad or putting some publicity out in the paper requesting for family members to submit their nomination forms will give us a better idea. We don't have to start with 101. The only reason the committee started...
Asking.
Yeah, it's because it's 101 polls.
can't find out because it's confidential?
Well,
When I was in the Navy, everybody, well, my friends all knew where I was.
We were not able to get that information, and we worked closely with the committee, and we weren't able to get the exact information.
That's unbelievable. That's confidential.
Okay. Mr. Quintero, then I have some speakers.
I'm for moving, I'm for allocating the money and moving on this as quickly as possible. And then we do absolutely have to get the community involved and do fundraising and get individuals perhaps to sponsor specific people and specific banners. But we need to allocate the money and let's get going. My ideal situation would be that we would have them up by Christmas for people that are serving overseas and to know that their hometown has the banner up. I think that would be a real positive thing for them. And then in terms of when the service members come back, we should present that replica at the podium here. When they come back, I guess it is a good idea to keep the banner itself because it seems to they're rotating constantly. But at least let's present the replica here and just thank them and say hello to them and so forth. So that, I think, is the way to go.
Okay, thank you. I have some speakers, and then there are some questions that Mr. Yousefian had posed. If we'll get to that at the end of this. I have Don Biggs, followed by Myrna Stanley, and then Evelyn Hansen.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, my name is Don Biggs, and I'm the chairman of the Special Projects part of the Citizenship and Patriotism Committee. We have a number of our committee members here tonight. The chairman is Alice Hamrajian and Judy Kendall from the Chamber of Commerce. I just wanted to quickly encourage folks to get hold of this application from the city and make the application. We'll do as quick a review on it as we possibly can, and then we'll get the names approved. We very much want to award those certificates here at council so that the families recognized as their loved ones are put up on the banners. And as the driving force of all this, I'd like to accede to Myrna Stanley. Thank you.
Myrna Stanley, you're next. The driving force. Are those cookies?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members and staff. Myrna Stanley, resident of the city. Thank you for what I hope is going to be a wonderful night for our community. If I could first of all address your comments about Bravo Company, they are all in Iraq and Afghanistan with the exception of maybe 4. And we thought it would be appropriate to have a banner for them since they are Glendale's Armory. I do have a list of the people who are in Bravo Company, and there are 2 that are from Glendale. I don't have their addresses, but I do have their names. And Mr. Councilman Yousefian, I too would very much like the community to pay for these banners if that's possible. If someone suggested if every family gave $1 for each member of their household, we wouldn't have a problem. I think it's more of a direct appreciation, recognition of our military if that happened, and that would be wonderful. And as you know, I just had a very small impromptu fundraiser. It wasn't that impromptu, in my backyard, and of course it was scheduled for the only day in September in the history of California that it ever rained. Thank you very much. So we had to cancel everything in the morning, and we rescheduled for the next day. But we're getting checks as late as yesterday. So we've raised $4,140, and if I can get it to the city clerk, there's change in there. So that pays for 11 banners.
You're trusting with cash?
No.
Get a receipt.
I was just going to hand it to the...
No, I counted it already 4 times. Thank you. I appreciate that. I could put this little puppy here. But I just wanted to... There's a young man, a Captain Brian McDermott, who you just missed meeting. He just left. He was here for 15 days leave. And this is Captain McDermott with his 2 sons. He's a Montrose resident. He's in Baghdad right now. And he's due to get out in January if he's not extended. And we'd sure like to have his banner up before he comes home. He's a wonderful young man. And this is just promoted to Sergeant. Captain Tom Hebert, age 23, is the youngest of Mac and Polly Hebert. He's a resident of Northwest Glendale. He's in intelligence. And unfortunately, he just suffered 2 slip discs, and they helicoptered him to some city, I can't remember the name of it. And then they are flying him to Kuwait, where he'll have surgery. And we don't know a lot because he's in, as I said, he's in intelligence, so you can't find out a lot. His parents would have been here, but they have to stay home waiting for a phone call. But he said he could hardly wait to get to Kuwait so he could have a McDonald's hamburger. So it's amazing the things that remind you of home. I hope that you'll reconsider about the Bravo Company. They were very excited about it, and actually I'm collecting items to send to them. And I think our banners they're just gorgeous. I'm so excited. They're just beautiful. Norma Smallbone did a beautiful job on them. They have to know they're our heroes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Stanley, I have a question, too.
Mr. Quintero.
So I wasn't aware of that. So Bravo Company, the first 160th, is actually serving in the combat zone.
Absolutely. They're all of them are in Iraq and Afghanistan, except for maybe 4.
Myrna, do you know how many people we have lost that are from Glendale?
I think it's 3.
I think it's more
I've gone to the funeral of 2, 3 or 4. Those are the only ones that I'm aware of.
Okay. I think I planted at least 4 trees for their memory. I missed one, I think, because that individual was not here, so I did not get that. So if you would give me those names, or you would like to fill the application.
Sure.
As I said, I made a pledge then. I just didn't know what the amount was.
Absolutely.
I will pay for every single one of those banners, no matter what the number is.
Thank you. And for the ones who have lost their lives, we could just put a black ribbon, and that says a lot when you just have a little black ribbon on their banner. I mean, it's pretty obvious.
Maybe George Smith Army says paid the ultimate sacrifice.
Sure.
I think that
absolutely.
That'll be very.
But aren't they beautiful?
They're beautiful. Do you concur with keeping it a little bit longer than 6 months for people who gave their life?
that's the least we could do. We keep it
Yeah.
up forever, as far as I'm concerned.
A quick note,
You know,
they will
these
start
are
to
all,
look rather
you know,
tattered
you don't
if
have
they're too long.
You don't have
Yeah,
to
they'll
worry
start to look
about this
old.
next generation, I'll tell you.
Well,
They're incredible.
but you're keeping the ones who are in there for more than 6 months, aren't you?
Yes, we are, but depending on how long they're going to be there, we may have to remanufacture again because they're not a material that can last for years and years. It's
Okay.
just temporary.
Well, so if we're going to do it for people who are alive, I think we should do it for people who have given everything they got, you know.
Okay.
He's morally bankrupt.
Thank you.
Evelyn Hansen, thank you, Myrna.
Thank you, Myrna.
Oh, good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Evelyn Hansen. I'm a second-generation lifelong Glendale resident and a veteran. I wonder two things about this program. I think it's a great program. I think we're kind of behind a few other cities around that have been doing this for a while. I'm glad to see it finally coming on board. One, Glendale Avenue used to be the main drag of Glendale until about the 1920s. That's like 80 years ago. Is this program not important enough to be on the main street of Glendale? Why is it not? And also, is there a verification process? Can I just submit a name, and as long as I say, oh yeah, he's there, get my child's name put up on a banner that'll be seen by everyone and be real exciting? That's all. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
That's a terrible thought, but Ms. Ayad. Is there...
of the times we live in.
We actually have a very lengthy application that the family has to fill out, and the application will go to the Glendale Chamber of Commerce Citizenship and Patriotism Committee, which will then they will verify the service area and the rank and when they left to Iraq or Afghanistan. So it's not going to be an easy process where anyone just going to go ahead and submit the application. We will accept it. They will go through the committee, and a lot of the members of the committee have access to this information, which we'll be able to verify.
You get the worldwide post locator.
Well, that's, your point's well taken, and we will make sure that there's no fraudulent attempts to
Yes.
place a banner.
And to address the question about Glendale Avenue, the reason why Glendale Avenue was actually chosen to be the main street is because it's closer to City Hall, and the starting point of Broadway, which signifies the area where City Hall and people come to City Hall and the courthouse across the street. And also, when we looked at other cities and we looked at the location where they actually have their banners, we identified them to be close and around the City Hall facilities. Brand is where most the residents look at Brandon being the main street in Glendale, and that is used as a business district, and the banners are on Brand or hung for a different purpose and reason. So that's why the committee wanted to identify Glendale as the main street for the military banners.
Thank you. I have another card from Vache, M.A.
Mangasarian, you know me.
Oh, I know it. I know it's exciting to get up.
Anyway,
and
I think
please
this
print
is-
your name out. This is for the record, Mr. Mangasari.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I think this is a fantastic project, a wonderful idea. I would suggest we build a little box with a lock on it and put it on Mr. Kassakhian's table, and anybody and everybody, including you all, from now on that walks into this chamber, put $1 in that box, including all the speakers that come to this podium and try to solve their problems in this city. I congratulate the people who started this program, and I think if everybody at this chamber gives $1, and it's going to be a big help. Thank you.
Mr. Kassakhian, let's have that name filled out properly. Okay, so that ends my speaker cards on this item. What issues remain unresolved at this point? Mr. Yousefian.
I have one question. For 5, I'm assuming there were 5 individuals who perished so far. and I hope that's the last one. I figured the cost would be about $1,905. So I'm going to commit to that. Does that $1,905 come out of the $38,000, or is that in addition to the $38,000? I'm just trying to understand, was the cost of the $38,000 to buy the banners that did not have names on them?
Yes, we actually don't have names on any of them, and the cost will
because
cover
the way you're showing
101.
me that, it's going to be very difficult to print white on red. And I know we've done banners before, and you know me, and I know the banner maker is not going to print white on red. It's not going to come out. So if you're spending money for the ones that are City of Glendale Thanks Bravo Company and Thank You for All Service Our Country, which is just a generic, I think that's fine. But I think the ones that have names on them, maybe we should have a deadline, like, you have till end of this month to get your applications in, or by middle of December. And this way, you have a list and you go, okay, print these with the names on. Well, mine are going to be easy because we already know their names are on the plaque down below.
Mr. Mayor, we actually are prepared to, once council gives us an approval to move forward, we're prepared to contact Gold Graphics and have him start printing all the banners. And if the color white, we could definitely look at a different color, perhaps look at a black color to replace the name. Instead of white, it will be black, so it will be something definitely.
Just very quickly, Mr. Mayor, has the graphics firm seen this design?
They actually designed it for us.
And did they have a problem with the white on the red?
No. He already looked at it and estimated.
Okay, well, that should...
So he's going to put a patch on it?
That should end then, I
Yes.
think.
The name will be printed on the
We'll let the
individual
experts
banners.
worry about
I'm just saying, if the printer was okay with it, he must know what he's doing.
Oh, he's putting a patch on it, so it's not integral part of the thing. It's like the Rose Printing and Garden Show and all the other ones that I've done before. You get a patch and you stick it on, and it's good. It will hold for about a year. After that, the glue has a tendency to separate. But I don't think the banner is going to last that long anyway. Fine. So consider my $1,905 as part of that $38,000 then?
My recommendation would be is appropriate the whole amount, because as money comes in, it'll reimburse the city for the costs, and we'll keep track of the funds for it. This way, the program can get started regardless of the fundraising.
I see. So people can go ahead and donate.
Oh, yeah,
I'll
absolutely.
move 8A1.
And 2?
And I can also move 8A2, right? And I move 8A2.
I'll second that as a fellow veteran.
Okay.
And Mr. Mayor, with modification that the people who lost their lives, that would stay on until the conflict is over?
No, that until the conflict is over, how do you define the conflict being over? There may be troops in the Middle East for the next 30 years of our lives. I mean, we got to
Korea.
I think Korea.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever, a year I think is appropriate or whatever. But,
I'll go for a year.
Yeah.
I'll go for a year.
Well, or until the flag, or until the banner...
Disintegrates.
Right. As long as the banner maintains its integrity, let's put that, and leave that to some judgment on discretion
The committee.
on behalf of the committee or the city manager's office.
And I also want to say that the fact that it was public knowledge where Mr. Weaver was stationed in Hawaii during those years is not an easy.
Yeah, that was rough.
That was.
But just like you, Mr. Quintero. Hey, Mr. Quintero, when you were in, you went where they told you to go, right?
No, I volunteered,
And
actually.
then they sent you where they wanted you. I was sent there. I didn't ask
Let's
them.
have the roll call, please.
Council members, Drayman?
Sound
Draft.
off.
Yes.
Draft is the draft. They send you where they want.
Quintero?
Yes.
Weaver?
Hi.
Yousefian?
Aye.
Mayor Najarian?
Yes. Thank you. It's a great program. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to throw you a curve. We are going to recess the regular city council meeting, which we're currently in the midst of. We are going to open the joint public meeting of the Glendale City Council and the Glendale Redevelopment Agency. We have one item. Since the Glendale City Council roll has already been called, I will turn it over to the acting chair of the Redevelopment Agency, Mr. Drayman, for...
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This would be the roll call for the joint public meeting of the Glendale City Council, the Glendale Redevelopment Agency. So for the agency, Mr. Kassakhian, would you please?
Agency members, Najarian.
Yes, here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Yousefian.
Here.
Chairman Drayman.
Here.
Will you read your report, please?
Agenda for the November 13, 2007 joint public meeting of the Glendale City Council and the Glendale Redevelopment Agency was posted on Thursday, November 8, 2007, on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. Will you read the first item?
One is Director of Development Services regarding report on method to set aside a percentage of tax increment generated per residential unit to fund parks and libraries. At 1A is Council Resolution directing staff to set aside certain tax increment revenues to fund parks and libraries. At 1B is Agency Resolution directing staff to set aside certain tax increment revenue to fund state parks and libraries. To fund parks and libraries.
Mayor,
Mr. Weaver.
as I stated before, I do not support doing this, setting money aside. And at this time, if I may, I'd like to be excused. See you next week.
Yes, you may. We'll see you next week, Mr. Weaver. We were going to Mr. Starbird.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll go to Phil Lanzafame, Director, for the staff report. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, Mr. Chairman, members of the agency. On October 9th, the City Council and Redevelopment Agency adopted a policy to set aside a portion of tax increment to help fund parks and libraries, augmenting funds that would be collected by a development impact fee. You, at that time, had asked staff to come back with a method to set that aside and also to determine a percentage of each. The direction was for those residential units that were subject to the development impact fee. What staff would propose is a couple of things. First, to establish two project accounts, one for the Central Redevelopment Project area and one for the San Fernando Road corridor, where funds could be set aside in those project accounts. That would allow us to keep them separate and to be used in the areas where they were generated. It would also be an annual appropriation that the redevelopment agency would make, making those funds immediately available upon appropriation. So if any opportunity would present itself for a park or library project, you could act on it quickly. We would also suggest that each year with our budget, we would present a report to you that would include the number of units that were developed in each project area, the amount of tax increment that those units generated, the funds available. In the report, we would talk about the funds that are available for projects. This would be very similar to the project report that we submit to the county each year for the county pass-back that we use. We would include in that any funds that had been spent in the prior year and on which projects. We would give to you a year-end balance, and then the projected revenue that would be new revenue plus that balance that would be available for funds. Finally, in our report, we would tell you if there were any proposed projects for your consideration and how those funds might be used to support those. Finally, we have presented in your packet an exhibit that gives a breakdown. I simply used percentages, typical benchmarks, 25%, 50%, 75%. We've also shown you what 100% of increment is generated from each of the what we call 5 pipeline projects, housing projects in the central project area, and those there is one in the San Fernando Road corridor. One thing that I failed to do in the exhibit was give you the total amount generated through the end of the project area. Assuming those projects were all built and they were completed in 09-10 and they hit the rolls in 10-11, you would have in the central project area some $58 million generated. That would be the total amount. 25% of that would be 14.5. 50% would be almost $29 million, and 75% would be $43 million, just over 43. In the San Fernando Road corridor, the total number that you have there is what would be generated annually, and the one project would generate about $11.5 million over the life of the project, and then the breakdown of the percentage. We are here to, number one, ask your direction on this method, and number two, more importantly, to fill in a percentage of each residential unit that you would like for us to set aside for parks and libraries.
Mr. Quintero.
Okay, well, I do think this is a very good idea, and it's a very good idea because it's going to allocate money for parks precisely where they're needed, around the downtown redevelopment area, south of the freeway, and along that long strip of San Fernando Road, starting with the L.A. border all the way up to Burbank, and all of the multiple multifamily and low-income neighborhoods along San Fernando Road. So I think this is the regions of Glendale that need the parks most. Every survey shows it. Everyone that knows anything about Glendale understands this is where we need to spend money for parks, and this is the way to do it. Literally every year, once these units are built, literally every year there will be money transferred from the redevelopment area into these accounts, which then the city council can go out and spend. And then, of course, we also have the ability in the future, and especially with the downtown redevelopment zone, we have the ability to actually go out and bond, which will even give us more of a impact in terms of raising funds. And I personally think that the 75% is the best bet. This is what redevelopment is about. It's supposed to be about redoing neighborhoods and about building communities and about improving the general lot of the residents surrounding the zones and in the zones. So I'm for the 75%.
Mr. Starbird.
Mr. Mayor, just 2 points of clarification as you're expressing your views. One is a percentage, and is that of the one-time allocation or every year for the remaining life of the project area?
Every year for the remaining life of the project. That way on and into bonding if we decide to do that. So that way every year the city council will be able, and future city councils will be able to kind of know and count on monies coming in for parks.
Are there any limits in that 75% figure that make that number impossible to allocate in the tax increment?
Two things just to clarify. The answer to your question is no. There's nothing formally precluding you, but two things. The numbers that I gave you assume that the projects are built and that we are able to bond for those. That will allow us to collect tax increment from the year 2015 to 2025. If we do not bond or create a debt by that, we would not be able to collect the increment. So the numbers that I gave you assume that we are able to bond. The second thing is the 75% you could set it aside, as we've said in our report, you could set any amount aside that you like. It is a balancing act for you between the objectives of the redevelopment agency and how much you want to set aside specifically for parks and libraries. If it is 75%, I would have to go back and calculate how much you would have left for other projects, other redevelopment projects. There is some of this funding that you have already, in the agency's funding, that you have already appropriated for the current CIP.
Mr. Quintero.
Well, and let's keep in mind, we're talking about the residential units that are going to be built in these redevelopment zones. We're not talking about other commercial projects. So by doing this, it's not going to affect any other commercial endeavors that go on in these zones.
Well, would it not include, tax increment isn't limited to residential units. It's any increase in the property value above and beyond. So are you saying limited only to?
Well, this what we're looking at tonight is limited just to the residential.
Yeah.
So in other words,
Why should we do that?
Well, I'm ready to go past the residential and go into commercial. I'm there with you.
Mr. Starbird.
Yeah, let me suggest before you go too far down this road, you will begin to, a couple of things. One is, you recall from our original presentation, there has to be a redevelopment purpose, and that can be defined, generally anything in a project area or close to a project area, but at some point that could begin to become a bit of a limitation on the use of the funds. And in the San Fernando corridor, you didn't prescribe in your plan that libraries and library improvements, so there it really is just parks, unless you did a plan amendment, which is a huge procedural process to go through. Two is, as we look at the CIP each year, and as our successors look at the CIP each year, you're going to have to figure out how best to use this money to hopefully support projects that you have planned so you can use the money effectively without as our goal of not repaying the existing loan. You can always resort to repaying the existing loan, but as we pointed out in the original presentation, then you lose $1 of money down the road for every dollar that you spend that has to be spent through a repayment of the loan. So the goal would be to find a way to utilize these monies for park and library improvements that will qualify as benefiting the redevelopment project areas, so that you can keep the existing city loan to the agency outstanding until the end of the life of the project areas, and as a result, get your biggest bang for your investment dollar. What Phil pointed out is that we have anticipated a total amount of increment that would come into the agency, including these projects, Phil. And so what we've anticipated in the existing CIP, we anticipated a 50% just for planning purposes. We would plug that dollar into our CIP, and then we'd have to make sure that those monies in the CIP went to support projects that have a redevelopment purpose or benefit to the project area for the central project area and the San Fernando project area. And that'll take a little bit of moving around and adjustment each year. And likelihood is you'll have the funds building up some surplus, and then you'll have a project arise that you'll want to pursue, and you'll appropriate those monies.
Mr. Yousefian.
Phil, would you go ahead and issue the bonds before the projects are built, or you have to wait for the projects to be built before you can issue the bonds? I want to know when the debt occurs.
You mean the housing projects?
Right.
You typically wait until the projects are at least far enough along so you know they'll be completed. For instance, if you wanted to go out right now and issue bonds, you could probably include the value from the Americana. It's well under construction. It's going to be completed in a few months' time. But you can't issue bonds and say, let's issue right now, and we're going to build this project. It should be done in 3 or 4 years.
Okay. And the other question is, can the agency at any time, on a yearly basis, can agency go in and look at their budget and say, we have funded all these projects and we would like to take, let's say, $2 million and put it toward, let's say, mini park acquisition in the agency area?
Mm-hmm. Yes, you could.
We can do that at any time.
In any calendar. Actually, you can do it during the budget cycle if you want.
Right. So as these projects get built in different times, we could do that, so long as the agency exists, because one of them is going to cycle out in about 8 years, and the other one has, 15 years, 12 years?
Another 34 years.
34 years for San Fernando? Okay, so we have that, but this one is only 8 years. So, I was willing to go for this. We can do this every year as we want it, as the money comes. I feel uncomfortable going out there issuing bonds when we don't know what is going to be built. Based on the economy, I think you guys are going to have to wait a long time before any of those projects get built. Everybody pulls a permit, and it's on the market to be sold. Nobody builds them. And I haven't seen it, and based on what is out there, it's getting even worse. So I'm a cash and carry type of a guy, It's like Ginger used to be. Cash and carry. You got the cash, you buy. You don't have the cash, you don't. I'm not into borrowing, so I'm going to wait. I'm not going to vote for this. Even though originally I said I was, I'm not going to vote for this for a different reason than Mr. Weaver is saying. I think we have that flexibility every year during the budget session. And if there's extra money left, if there's $2 million left, you can allocate that. If there's $5 million left, you can allocate it. Whenever these things get built, you got money. If you don't have money, you don't spend it. That's it. I don't want to go out there and do a debt.
Well, wait a minute. Nobody, I don't know how we've jumped on bonds. I mean, my concept is that we're going to allocate this money for parks. When these units are built, we will get that money and we will spend it on parks. The issue of bonds is much further down the line, so I don't advocate bonding for anything until these units are built and operating. So to me, it's about setting the money aside for parks so that we can start building and developing parks, not bonding is in the future.
Well, I think it's as Mr. Lanzafame said, is that you're not going to be able to obtain a bond unless the project is at or near its completion.
Out of the ground. Yeah.
So it's not as though, cash and carry is fine, but I think we owe it to the public to obtain the best benefit for an income flow and take advantage of our ability as a municipality to obtain bond financing, which will give us a greater amount of funds at the very start of a income flow, income stream.
But Mr. Mayor, what happens if those units that we're expecting, the 1,000 units that everybody keeps saying is happening in the redevelopment agency, what happens that they are completed on year 9 and redevelopment agency is finished? What do you do then?
Mr. Starber, is there anything?
It's a possibility.
I've wanted to explain a little bit about the mechanism. Keep in mind, back when we talked about potential bonding for the redevelopment agency, if you have debt outstanding, you get an extra 10 years to collect increment and repay it. So the central project area has 8 more years. If you could sell bonds today, and none of these projects could be bonded, because, as Phil pointed out, the rating agencies aren't going to give you a marketable rating, and the bond buyers aren't going to buy anything that isn't physically in the ground, well under construction, so they have an assurance it's going to be done, going to go on the rolls, and going to be successful. Assuming that if these projects aren't built, then you won't be able to do bond financing for them. You could do cash allocation. You get your tax increment from them, you set it aside, you spend it for parks. The only benefit that bonding gives you is you can collect more tax increment because you can bond for an extra 10 years beyond the life, so you can collect the tax increment to repay the debt. So as a result, you can get more of your money up front and extend the life. But you can also do it on a cash and carry. If one of these projects came in the last year, you probably wouldn't sell bonds for 1 or 2 projects for just the remaining 11 years. You'd probably just set the money aside for as long as you could, and that would be the end of it once the project came to a completion. We tend to assume bonds because that's the greatest way to leverage your money. But a lot will depend on when these projects come online.
And that's my discomfort.
Well, in the meantime,
I don't know what's going to come down.
You can't bond until they're online. So you can't sell bonds on the come that maybe these projects will be done. You can't do it. You won't be able to sell it. You won't get a rating on it.
Right. They won't rate you.
They won't rate you. So you can't sell bonds in hopes they'll come online. The only way you'll be able to sell bonds based on these projects is they're a good percentage under construction.
Mr. Lanzafame.
Mr. Mayor, the way that we would envision this is, as we receive increment, we would tell you for the next year, we've received it, we have this much money available for parks. You could make that decision. That's money in the bank. You could make that decision whether to continue to keep it in the bank or use it for a project. I think when we get enough critical mass, as Mr. Starbird has suggested, we'd come back to you and say, do you want to use the revenue stream from all of these projects to bond? If there's not enough there, it doesn't make it worthwhile, we would continue to just set aside however much we actually receive, and so it's a pay-as-you-go, which is what you had asked for last month.
Mr. Quintero.
Well, and in addition to that, even if you only do it for 1 or 2 projects, or let's say 2 or 3 projects, I mean, they're consequential sums of money here for these different projects. $700,000 for 1 year, $800,000 the first year for, say, the Verdugo Gardens. You add that up with the one-time impact fees, and you're talking about literally millions of dollars that we'll be able to collect immediately once these projects come online. So And, to me, it's a no-brainer. If you want parks around the Central District and around San Fernando Road, this is the way to go. Long-term, hopefully, they will get built in a timely fashion and we can bond the future income, but just a couple of years of and a few projects coming in, and we'll have a substantial amount of money.
The proposal then, I guess, by Mr. Quintero was 75% of the residential units, the tax increment from the 75% of the residential units. He's nudged me and urged me to curb my enthusiasm to go to a higher percentage for the entire tax base of the redevelopment area. So I'm going to accept his nudge to curb
this
my
evening.
zealousness.
Let's be clear, only this evening. Let's get this passed, and then we can have another report and take it from there. But for this evening, I think this is very important.
Mr. Drayman.
So are we saying that the other report we're talking about is for the non-residential? Is that the idea?
Sure.
Okay. All right.
Okay, and you're seeking direction?
Mm-hmm.
Have we given you enough direction?
Again, Mr. Mayor, you have blanks in the resolutions to fill in.
the blank?
Fill in the blanks with
Okay.
the percentage.
Well, I think you've,
Okay.
Mr. Howard, will you make the appropriate insertions there?
At 1A, you have a council resolution directing the set-aside. You just tell us the percentage, and what I'm hearing is 75%. If somebody wants to move 1A at 75% for the council.
I will move 1A at 75% for the council.
Is there a second? Or comments?
Well, I would second it if I'm allowed to second it as acting chair of redevelopment.
Yeah, this is for the council.
This is the council resolution.
Council. All right, then.
Second?
Yes.
Second. Okay. If there's no further discussion, roll call on 1A.
Council members Drayman,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver, Yousefian.
No.
Mayor Najarian.
Yes.
Okay, then for the redevelopment agency,
1B, same
I'll
percentage.
move 1B at 75%.
Second?
Maybe a second. All right. Kassakhian, whenever you're ready.
Certainly. Agency members Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver, Yousefian,
No.
Chairman Drayman.
Yes.
Okay, I would then like either the city staff or the redevelopment agency to prepare a report on the feasibility of allocating some of the tax increment from other projects in the two redevelopment zones,
Non-residential.
the non-residentials, to explore those possibilities. And incidentally, let's say the McGuire's Partners building, which is actually broken ground near the hotel, near the Embassy Suites, for instance, that would be part of, even though it's already footprints in the ground, that can be part of any allocation of tax increments, correct?
Is that the only project you would like that's not subject to the...
No, I'm just saying that is
As an
one
example.
example.
Let me respond by saying you can commit any money you want
Yeah.
to, whether it's projects in the ground, projects not in the ground.
Right.
It's your policy.
Okay. And
And that's what this reflects, is a strong policy statement by the council.
we'll look forward to that report. Will that come back to the redevelopment agency?
It'll come back to a joint meeting.
We can bring it back to a joint meeting, and I would envision giving you laying out the direction that you have already given staff for commitments on agency funds, and then what might be left to do this type of set-aside.
Mr. Starr?
Yeah, I might note, this would be a time to really look forward as to what you want to accomplish with whatever remaining life you've got in your two project areas. For probably both existing funds, a large part of which is committed, but also your prospective funds. So it would be a time to take a step back and say, okay, because the central project area is 7, 8 more years, and then 10 if you've got bonded debt outstanding. After that, you're done in the central project area, and that is, at least for that period of time, will be the bulk of your resources. So it'll be a time to really think through what you expect to have happen in the next 8 years, that whether it's parks, libraries, or other purposes you'd want to put your money to.
All right, thank you.
Move to adjourn for council. Move to adjourn for redevelopment agency.
Second?
Redevelopment agency is adjourned.
Move to adjourn for council.
We don't want to do that.
Oh, you don't want to do that?
Oh, you're right.
Want to do that?
You got a meeting to finish up, yeah.
So we will, the joint meeting, therefore, is ended, and we will resume with the previously commenced City Council meeting. We were on 8B,
Mr. Mayor.
I believe. Mr. Yousefian.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to leave, but I have one question on item 8C, which deals with the introduction of the ordinance on the amendment to the Building and Safety Code. If you could do that, I can get my answer and I can leave.
We will, to accommodate Mr. Yousefian, we will move to 8C ahead of 8B.
8C is Director of Public Works regarding adoption of 2008 Glendale Building and Safety Code. At 8C1 is ordinance for introduction, adopting and amending specific portions of the California Building and Standards Code as the 2008 Glendale Building and Safety Code.
Mr. Yousefian, why don't you start?
Sir Tom, on page 246 of your code that is in front of me.
Mr. Mayor, council members, unfortunately, I don't have the document.
I'll give it to you.
I'll give it to you. Could you explain what that means? I think it deals with doors in in a commercial setting. You can have doors that are all tempered glass, or that particular. And I was wondering, what was that about? Somebody could explain that.
Certainly. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Stuart Tom, building official. What Councilmember Yousefian is referring to is actually an existing provision within our security code that is brought back into our proposed Glendale Building and Safety Code once again, and this is just a security standard to make sure that commercial properties are allowed to be secured, and because of the fact that the front entrance is generally required means of egress from that space, these are the provisions which identify exactly how you would be allowed to utilize a security grill. Otherwise, security grills are not permitted in the state building code.
Okay, so based on that document, a person is allowed to put a security grill on top of the door, or is it attached to the door? Is it hanging in front of it? I mean, that was my issue. I couldn't understand what it actually said. That's why I'm giving you that section. So you can explain to me as a contractor, I cannot understand that section. So what does that mean? What do you want from me?
There actually aren't any restrictions on how you do it. The state building code would otherwise preclude the use of any security grill at all. Whether or not you put it in front of, or if it's integral with the door, it's the designer or the builder's means and methods choice of how to build it. But once they do that, these are the parameters which identify exactly how that would be allowed to be locked and secured.
So it is not something that is integral into the glass because the glass is not tempered?
That's correct. That's correct. It does not need to be integral with that.
Okay, so...
It could be a separate device, for example.
Okay, so you have to have, you can have a tempered glass, and then on top of that, you could have a grill that is made out of this material, iron, that is a 5x5, and all the other things.
That would be acceptable.
Okay, that's what I understand. And currently, we do not allow that.
Currently, we do. This brings back into our current code what we currently have. The standard actually will not change. We will maintain what we currently have.
Okay, because I haven't... Okay, never mind. That was my question. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
For the folks at home, Mr. Tom, briefly explain exactly what we're doing here and the reason for incorporating California building standards into our local codes.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I would be happy to. It turns out that approximately every 3 years, the State of California Building Standards Commission adopts a new code. In this manner, the State of California can have the most protective standards for the citizens of our state. Due to a number of political reasons, since 1998, the state of California has actually stalled on the 1997 Uniform Building Code, and as a result, our state has actually been enforcing a code that is older than that has been used by most of the other states in the nation. On January 30th of this year, California finally moved forward. And today, the city of Glendale has the opportunity of being one of the first cities to introduce an ordinance that will allow us to adopt the new California Building Code, which is now based on the International Building Code. And it sets forth a number of new standards, a new way of ensuring safety. In a nutshell, what this ordinance does is this ordinance gives our city the opportunity not only to adopt those standards, but also to increase those standards above and beyond what the state has required in areas that we feel it's necessary as a result of either a topographical, geological, or climatic reason. And so as a result, these standards will even upgrade Glendale's building code, fire code, mechanical code, electrical code, and so forth beyond what the state has mandated to be effective on January 1st.
Thank you. This is an ordinance for introduction.
I will introduce the ordinance and make the comment that it is so detailed that it actually gets into the use of motorcycles, motor scooters, and motor vehicles operating within hazardous fire areas. So that's a detailed code.
Very much so. Okay, the ordinance has been introduced by Mr. Quintero. Thank you, Mr. Tom, and Christine, and everyone from Public Works, Fire. The next, let's see, we skipped over 8B, so let's go back to 8B, Mr. Kassakhian.
Mr. Mayor and Council, at 8B is Director of Public Works regarding Federal Transit Administration FTA Section 5310 grant funds and City Prop C local transit grant matching funds. At 8B1 is motion authorizing city manager to execute agreement with California Department of Transportation, Division of Mass Transportation, for procuring 6 accessible paratransit vehicles for a total project cost of $284,000. At B2 is a resolution appropriating $284,000.
Okay, this is some money we're going to be getting from Caltrans for these vehicles. Would anybody like a report from
I'd like
Catherine
her.
Engel?
Yes, I'd like her to just give us a quick idea of it. They look great.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As you're aware, the city's been offering and providing a dollar ride paratransit program for our seniors and our disabled of our community. And in trying to support our system and our operations, earlier this year, we took advantage of a Federal Transit Administration grant program. We had a grant-funded opportunity to support our paratransit programs. The federal funding is referred to as Section 5310 funding, and it provides usually capital programs for vehicle replacements or vehicle purchases, and sometimes administrative or operational facilities. In this case, Caltrans is the contractor or the lead agency for the state of California. The 5310 funds are given throughout the United States, and with the state funding designated through Caltrans this year. The staff submitted a request for a purchase of 6 vehicles, 2 cutaway vehicles and 4 minivans, for a total grant request of $284,000. The city's grant request was selected by Caltrans, and the federal portion of that grant is 88.53% of the cost of those vehicles. So the grant amount from the FTA through Caltrans is for $251,425. This would require a city match of 11.47%, so just a small amount compared to the overall purchase price of the vehicles for $32,575. So tonight, staff is requesting that council approve the city manager to be authorized to enter into a contract with Caltrans for that grant award and for the purchase of the vehicles. And pending your action on 8B1, staff's also requesting an appropriation of the funds for that grant purchase. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Okay, I'm ready to move 8B1.
Second.
1 and 2?
1 and 2.
Second.
Is there a card from Dr. Spiritu? No. Okay.
Roll call, please.
Council members Drayman,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver, Yousefian, Mayor Najarian.
Yes. Let's see, that takes us to 8D.
8D is Interim Director of Glendale Water and Power regarding water service connection fees. 8D1 is Ordinance for Introduction, amending Glendale Municipal Code Chapter 13.16 relating to method for establishing fees for water service connections. 8D2 is Resolution setting forth the schedule for fees for water service connections.
Okay. Is this an introduction, Mr. Howard?
The introduction of the ordinance, and then the resolution
8D1
adopted won't become effective for 30 days.
I'll introduce the ordinance at AD1.
Thank you. And will you move the resolution at 8D2?
I'll move the resolution at AD2.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Council members Drayman,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver, Yousefian, Mayor Najarian.
Yes. The next item? 8.
At 8E is action items, Director of Planning regarding proposed ordinance amending Title 5, 16, and 30 of the Glendale Municipal Code relating to miscellaneous revisions to the Glendale Municipal Code. 81 is motion to initiate.
There's no.
Okay, is there,
I'll move, is it
no speaker cards?
81?
Yes.
Yes, I'll move 81.
Second.
Several miscellaneous changes. Roll call, please.
Council members Drayman,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver, Yousefian, Mayor Najarian.
Yes. That concludes the action items. We're going to return then to our patient residents who have stayed till 9:20. Let's start with Evelyn Hansen, followed by Margaret Hammond, then Mike Mohill.
Oh, good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Evelyn Hansen. Just a few comments on today's or this evening's meeting. Mr. Quintero, when the council was talking about the park, you said that talking about speed bumps down there for traffic to slow everybody down. No, I wasn't either of you, but that's okay because I think it's a problem. I think it's not only a problem around the parks, it's a problem everywhere in Glendale. There have been 3 hit-and-run accidents within 100 feet of my house in the last 5 years, all of them related to speed. 2 took out a fire hydrant. 2 took out the same fire hydrant. It's like always a new fire hydrant there because people keep taking it out. One of them just wiped out a car. There have been 3 other accidents during that time period, all related to speed. It's getting really ridiculous, and it's because there's just no enforcement. PD, during one of the accidents, I spoke to one of the PD officers, and they said that my street was known for speeding. But there's never anybody stationed there to hand out tickets. Maybe it wouldn't be known for speeding if it were enforced more. And I'll tell you, you guys are overlooking a great source of revenue. I haven't had any kind of moving violation for a while, but I know those tickets are steep. And
You like one? No.
Are you sworn?
No.
I'm sometimes sworn out. But we really need more enforcement everywhere in Glendale. My street, I think...
What street is that? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
That I live on? Spencer Street. Just right by Hoover High School. I can stand in the street in front of my house, look straight down, and see into the tennis courts of Hoover High School. Part of the problem is that I'm so close to a high school, and all the young guys who just aren't used to having all that testosterone are exercising it. Another problem is that my street is very straight and a quarter-mile long. So you put any kid with just coming into testosterone on a quarter-mile stretch, and they got to see how fast they can get to the other end. For a while, whenever the winds would blow and the palm fronds would fall out of the trees, someone would mysteriously pile them all up in the middle of the street and make speed bumps. It was right in front of my house, and then I'd sit up on my balcony and laugh at all the people. You collect the palm fronds now. I'm disappointed. took away a major source of my entertainment.
Oral communications, not a confessional.
I don't know who was doing it. I'm not confessing. I don't know who was doing it, but it was a great source of entertainment. Another thing that I wanted to speak about. We're looking at a doubling of water rates in Glendale, and yet we still have city ordinances that require living landscaping that drinks water. Lots of people have lawns that I'm sure, given the opportunity and the ability to do so, they'd love to change out for the turf that you're putting at the high schools, the football turf that was talking about the other day. I might actually be talked into putting in a lawn if I could do that. And we also have, I'm sure, the same code that I was filed criminally, or I was charged criminally with twice for using mulch in my yard to retain water. I've got a half-acre yard. I just cannot deal with, well, my water bill sometimes is $600 a month with all the mulch. I can't even imagine what it would be without the mulch. And if you double the water rates, and I'm just going to have to put more mulch. And then I have to fight with the city again. And thirdly, it's Veterans Day. And today I haven't heard anybody speak about, well, we did hear a great deal of speak about some of our veterans, but we didn't hear anything at all about Veterans Day, about all of us vets that have fought for our country and our flag. Every member of my family, or every male member plus myself, are military members or veterans, and I think it might have been mentioned. And, you know, if I can put up a website and get $25 a pop, I got to get a website. I think it has to be fraud. If I say save the Brand Library or save the Doctor's House, give me $25 and I'll work on that. Thank you.
It's only fraud if you get fooled. I don't think you got fooled. But let me ask a couple questions on the points that she raised. Number one, if a resident wants to put in artificial turf, actually my mom asked me about this. She went to the sports complex and was admiring the nice green fields. And is that a problem if a resident wants to put in either turf or a rock, what do they call the rock base?
Well, it's approved landscaping, but I don't know if necessarily it requires water-thirsty landscaping. But we will definitely look into
Can you come back to us? I mean, people are
options
thinking,
for
obviously, of these
drought-resistant
options.
or low water usage. That's definitely something.
My understanding of the code is that it says living.
I think you're right. So let's take a look at that, and if necessary, maybe we can adjust the ordinance. At least discuss it. The other item you raised is the speeding, and there is a process to get speed humps placed. It starts with a petition signed by 75% of the residents on that block, and Mr. Galanyan or anyone at the Department of Public Works or the Transportation Department can assist you in that, and it has to meet certain criteria. The street has to be a proper width. It has to have a certain minimum and maximum flow.
Speed and number.
You're straight,
speed and
so
traffic.
that's good. So I'm sure they're happy to inform you on those things, especially around the high school, and I think we appreciate the issues that...
All of our traffic is probably between the hours of 3 and 5, and when we went through that, we didn't get enough day-long traffic.
So you've tried it already?
I didn't, but I can try it again, and this time I'll just make more trips up and down the street.
Okay.
I can do that. Really fast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Margaret Hammond.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, what members of the council remain, probably the important ones at this point, and members of the staff, and my friends, and what's left of the audience. At any rate, number one, my name is Margaret Hammond. I've tried to get speed bumps on my street, and I think with very good cause. Everybody comes along Los Feliz, makes a left turn up Glendale, and immediately makes a right turn along Cypress Street and goes over the top of that hill like maniacs. And I tried to get them, and they said, oh, you don't have enough people, you need 1,000 cars. I know there has to be more than, I think they said there were 200. I know there has to be more than that going up and down that street, especially in the morning at like from 8 o'clock or 8, whatever, and then again in the evening when they're coming back from downtown. It's horrendous with the amount of traffic. The other thing is I did attend a couple of really great events, in a sense, that show what Glendale is all about. And number one, of course, was our Adams Square gas station that we opened the park, and it's beautiful, and we're very excited about it. And as a matter of fact, the Historic Preservation book is listed, or we have Glendale has received a mention in that particular magazine for the gas station, for the fact that we preserved that gas station and used it. It's very unique. It's a very unique thing. So I haven't seen it, but I understand it's on the website or the whatever from their magazine. And the other thing is, of course, the other event, that one was really a fun event, the Adams Square. The one this morning for Ginger Bremberg, her planting her tree, was another kind of a celebration. It was a celebration of her life. And I think that the people that turned out were several ex-mayors, city manager, the word wouldn't come. City managers, past and present, and a lot of other people who are her friends for many years were there, and it was really very gratifying to see how many people loved her. I mean, I don't know how many were there. It looked to me like about 100 were all crowding on the sidewalk and out into the road, and it was very warm. The other thing about Ginger, one of the things that she and Vonnie Rossman did was go around and have the trees and bushes, or the bushes, planted up and down San Fernando Road. And those bushes were all torn out when they did whatever over there and have never been replaced, and we keep hearing that we're going to be getting landscaping. It would be really nice to remember all the work that Ginger and Vonnie did to get those plants put in there, those bushes, and maybe get them replaced sooner than later. The other suggestion I would like to make, since I'm here at this time, is how about having a stopwatch for the 1 hour period? And then when people get into discussions with the city council or take double time, that it's noted how much time is left. I think, or else have a big, bong and bong them on the head when it's time to tell them to shut up. The other one thing that I do need to bring up, I received a phone call from Mr. Simonian, and he wanted to bring to my attention that he was not a part of that GPOA. And I said, well, what can I say? That's what I was told by what I thought was a reliable source. And when I questioned that reliable source, he told me who had told him. So it goes around in circles. Sometimes you can't always believe what you think is a reliable source. And but he was upset. He wanted to be sure that people did not think he was part of that GPOA group. And so anyway, that's all I have to say this evening. And Glendale is a wonderful place to live. And as I say, our park is beautiful, and I think the people that get together are family and friends and neighbors to celebrate our park, and of course Ginger's passing that we did. And that the stone that, or where the marker is where the door to the old Robin Hood. That was the door to the old Robin Hood bar, was right there at that spot where we used to go out at the back door and go over there to the Robin Hood and have a couple of cocktails, as they were called in those days. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Margaret, and keep an eye on that park for us.
There's a lot of graffiti all up and down our street, not just at Cerritos. Our street is utterly graffiti.
Well,
terrible.
We have to all be watchful, and all of us do our part to stop that. Before we move on to the next to the ultimate adjournment, I think, of the meeting, I need to make a correction. I did get an email from my family, and I misspoke. My brother-in-law is not a captain, he's a major. So I'm in trouble now for calling him a captain.
You might say you made a major error.
I made a major error. So I'd just like to correct that. Mr. Kassakhian?
If there's no new business.
No new business. No written communication.
Required is a motion to adjourn. I move we adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned.